Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm calling to order this meeting of the Council of the Town of Oakville. I invite everyone to rise and join in the singing of O Canada. So, Madam Clerk, we have no regrets. Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Councillor Lapworth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a declaration of pecuniary interest on one of the bylaws this evening, as one of my income tax clients is an employee of Clublink and works at the Glen Abbey Golf Club. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. So now I would like mover and seconder for confirmation of the minutes on the agenda. Councillor Lischena, Councillor Hutchins, all in favor? The minutes are adopted. We have a public presentation from the students and former students of St. Dominic Elementary School to make a presentation regarding Bill 148, Fair Workplaces, Better Jobs Act of 2017. And this presentation has been facilitated by longtime Ward 1 Councillor Ralph Robinson, who has always had a very I would say, strong interest in supporting the students of St. Dominic's. So can the students and the St. Dominic's people come forward? Welcome. Now, as long as you make sure that you're talking in the direction of the mic, everything should be great.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. My name is Nina March. I'm a Catholic teacher, and I have the distinct privilege of representing elementary Catholic teachers all across our Halton region. In school, we teach math and language, science and geography, along with a variety of other subjects. But as Catholic teachers, we bring these subjects a values-based lens. In all that we do, we promote values like human dignity, fairness, compassion, respect, and concern for social justice and the environment. The values we promote and the lessons we teach are ones that all Ontarians embrace regardless of their faith, and these values benefit not only Catholic students, but societies as a whole. What does modern values-based education look like in practice? It looks like the meaningful work that John McPhail and his former students are here to discuss with you tonight. They took important societal issues like updating and changing our labor laws and looked at them holistically. The presentations on the Changing Workplaces Review that Mr. McPhail's students were engaged in is a perfect example of our Catholic graduate expectation of creating responsible citizens. Responsible citizens are a testament to Catholic social teaching by promoting equality, democracy, and solidarity for a just, peaceful, and compassionate society. Mr. McPhail's students did all of this, and with the royal assent and implementation of Bill 148, they saw their vision for a better future for workers, both individuals and families in our community and across the province, become reality. They are truly shining examples of the promise for a better tomorrow as they demonstrate our Catholic faith in action. I am very proud to be here this evening to introduce Mr. McPhail's former grade 8 St. Dominic Catholic elementary school students who have since graduated and are now some of our current grade 9 students from St. Thomas Aquinas. Thank you for listening, Your Worship and members of council.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. My name is Brooke Schmidt, and with me presently are Taryn Silvestri and Jessica Kea-Germain. Last year in our grade 7-8 class, we had the privilege and honor to create a presentation on precarious employment, how it shapes the lives of workers, and how little workplace standards have improved in the last 100 years. We learned about the poor standards in workplaces during the early 1900s and found that the poor treatment of workers then shares similarities in today's work environments. We looked more into today's standards and found out just how badly people are being treated in their jobs. In grade 8, we also learned about human dignity in our Catholic teachings. Human dignity means that everyone is valued equally and should be treated with the same civility and respect as one another. We are very grateful to Councillor Ralph Robinson and Minister of Labour Kevin Flynn for taking time out of their busy schedules to watch our presentation we worked ever so hard on. Moving forward a few months to this day, we received the opportunity to meet with Julie Clark, whom we are thankful for teaching us about Bill 148, stating labor laws in Oakville that improve the quality of workplaces in our town. Oakville has made many progressions in workplace etiquette, and we are grateful for the stable working environment provided by our town. A factor from Bill 148 that is prominent in my view of precarious employment is that employees can refuse shifts without repercussion if the employer gives them less than a 4 days' notice. Last year, during our explorations in the topic of precarious employment, myself and my peers discovered the unfair conditions that workers must deal with, one being short notice shifts in workplaces. In a society where many employees must work multiple jobs to be able to support themselves, whether that be as college and university students, graduates are in short supply of work in their field, or people with personal struggles like supporting a child at a young age, it is important that workers may refuse to work when they are made aware of their shifts after short notice. Often employers may give their workers shifts on short notice, and because workers need the multiple jobs to maintain a steady income, they may have been taking another shift in that time to be given work. This section of Bill 148 is important to me because in a few years I will be enrolled in university, and as a student, supporting my bills and paying student fees, it will be difficult. Having 2 jobs will be stressful while needing to keep up with my grades, and if I have the opportunity to decline work if it is short notice and I am busy, it will benefit me while trying to keep my stress levels down. With this addition to Bill 148, many people have unstable employment and thrive in their living situations.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of the Council. My name is Taryn Silvestri. Last April, we created a presentation about precarious employment in Canada and its evolution from the 1900s till now. Through that, we discovered that even though our working conditions have changed for the better, we still face issues today, with many people still feeling insecure in the workplace. Many workers at one time or another are faced with an emergency situation at home, a sick child, an elderly parent, a flooded basement. These circumstances must be dealt with immediately, and people have no choice but to be away from work. Imagine the anxiety caused by being unable to assist a family member in need for fear of losing his or her job. Up until the introduction of Bill 148, only workers of companies employing more than 50 people were entitled to take personal emergency leave. This right has now been granted to every worker in the province of Ontario. Everyone is now entitled up to 10 days per year, 2 of which are paid, including those workers at companies with less than 50 employees. This issue was significant to me because I'm a strong believer in human dignity and solidarity, and I believe that as a society, we must fight against the inequity in our world. As a community, it's our obligation to meet the needs of the people in the workplace, and Ontario is leading the march for drastic change in employment standards. The purpose of this presentation was not only to acknowledge the progress we've made so far, but also to motivate us to demand change when we see injustice.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. My name is Jessica Kea-Germain. I currently attend St. Thomas Aquinas Catholic Secondary School. Last year when I was in grade 8, we learned about the history of the workplace. My teacher, Mr. McPhail, informed us about the new and changing labor laws. We were assigned a project to research these changes. We got interested and involved, and here we are now. For he himself is our peace, who has made the 2 groups one and has destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall of hostility. This quote from the Bible shows us that to be one as a community, we need to take down the metaphorical walls of inequality, to constantly be striving towards greatness. In our continuously advancing and developing world, we need to change and develop along with it. This is important to me because I am a young woman and I will be entering the work world within a few years, and so will most of my peers. We are and need to continue to support and keep up with the changing times and give my generation the advancement it needs to bring forth a new era. We need to be the change and set an example for the rest of Canada and the world. Bill 148 is the first steps in the positive advancement for our new generations. Bill 148 is our example. In Bill 148, the things that caught my eye would be how we will now be increasing the charge for employers who violate employment standards and that their names will be published by the government. This is very important to know who you are working for and make sure you do not get taken advantage of. Oakville is already more advanced than most municipalities, which we learned when in January of 2018, we met with Julie Clark, Head of Human Resources. She helped us express our ideas and be able to attend this council meeting today. As long as Oakville continues our current path into modernness, we will be on the forefront of changing the workplace. I would like to thank the town of Oakville for being an outstanding example and continuing to strive towards change. We would like to thank Mr. McPhail, Julie Clark, Councilman Robinson, and Member of Provincial Parliament, Kevin Flynn, for encouraging and listening to us. Thank you, Your Worship and members of Council. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I understand that the Minister of Labour you just mentioned is here and might like to make a remark.
Your Worship, when somebody says something really nice about you, you leave it at that.
I believe he said thank you. It sounded like thank you to me. Thank you very much for your information. All right. Now, Council, we have 20 delegations concerning the OYS, and we have some, and that will take quite a long time, and I would urge you to consider starting to think about the necessity which may occur of us having to resume the meeting tomorrow if it goes to the hour tonight, which is 10 o'clock, and 20 delegations can use a lot of time. Before we do that, it's urgent that we deal with 4 other matters, and that is the first and third consent items and discussion items 4 and 5. And as long as we're doing the consent items, we might as well do, oh no, we can't do the second consent item because I'm aware of motions that may cause some debate and it'll no longer be a consent item. So I would like, so I'm going to shift the agenda around, which I'm allowed to do under the procedure bylaw. And I'm going to ask for motions for item 1 and 3 of the consent agenda. Councillor Adams and Councillor Knoll is the seconder. Discussion, all in favor? The consent item, the 2 consent items are adopted. Item 2 will slip down to after OYS. And I'm going to come back to the standing committee reports, and I'll do that right now, actually. What I'd like is for someone to move, we can separate an item on request, so I only need a request. I separate item number 12. Councillor Duddick, thank you. So
I'd also like to separate item number 9 on ASC as well, please.
9, all right. So I need a mover and seconder for the balance of the reports. Councillor Chisholm, Councillor O'Meara, all in favor? And the balance are adopted. So now I'd like you to take your attention to item 4, the Transportation Master Plan Review. And this matter feeds into the development charges matter, which follows it. Mr. Green, do you have anything for us on item 4?
Through you, Your Worship, we do have a presentation from Manager of Transportation, Jill Stephen, if Council would like that.
Council? I think we do.
There we go.
Good evening, Mayor Burton, members of council. Tonight's presentation is regarding the Transportation Master Plan Review, which you'll find on page 115 of tonight's agenda. The main recommendation of tonight's report is approval of the Transportation Master Plan Review. And through the presentation tonight, I'll provide a quick reminder of what we approved in 2013 through the TMP, Transportation Master Plan, switching gears. But the focus of tonight's presentation is on the review of the Transportation Master Plan that was conducted over the past year and a half to support the development charges bylaw update. So switching gears is our Transportation Master Plan. It was completed in 2013. This review that we're talking about tonight is not a full update of the TMP. It is just a review to support the DC bylaw. There are a number of reasons for that, primarily related to the data that was available at this time. Our model is based on 2011 Transportation Tomorrow survey data because we are still collecting and analyzing the data from 2016. And the population and employment numbers are still being updated to 2041. Finally, there are a number of supportive transportation plans and initiatives that are ongoing and are still evolving. Things such as autonomous vehicles and connected vehicles, mobility as a service. These could have major impacts on the way that we travel, but there is much more for us to explore in these areas before we can provide real recommendations in a transportation master plan. Since the goals and objectives of switching gears are still valid, but we needed to do a review of the projects to support the DC bylaw, this was our primary area of focus. The work was conducted with a multidisciplinary, multi-departmental team led by engineering and construction and supported by Oakville Transit, planning, finance, environmental policy, parks and open space. We retained a consultant team led by WSP and supported by GLPI and worked closely with the development charges team, including their consultants, Watson and Associates, and their subconsultant, Dillon Consulting. Although this wasn't a full transportation master plan update, we did follow a master plan-like approach to our consultation. We set up a project webpage with a dedicated email address for inquiries and comments. We held 2 public information centers in the spring and fall of last year. We held meetings with technical agencies and stakeholders and conducted an online poll to encourage additional input. Throughout the process, we also provided updates to Council's Development Charges Steering Committee, as the 2 processes were very closely tied together. As I mentioned at the start of my presentation, switching gears, our Transportation Master Plan was completed in 2013. The vision of switching gears was for a transportation system that will accommodate growth to 2031 and incorporate the town's planning framework. The transportation system will be one that's safe, efficient, and accessible and provide choices in mobility, as well as being one that fosters the use and development of a sustainable transportation network, including public transit services and on and off-road pedestrian and cycling facilities that allow those modes to be used as alternatives to the car. Switching gears was based on a high transit mode split scenario with 20% of trips on public transit and 6% each by transportation demand management and active transportation. In addition, switching gears recommended a number of infrastructure projects such as the Midtown transportation projects and road widenings on some of our arterials. Switching gears included a number of projects and programs both by the town and built on projects that have been identified by others such as Metrolinx, MTO, and Halton. Not all of our projects have moved forward as anticipated in 2013 when we finalized the plan, but we have implemented or are working on many of those projects and initiatives that were recommended, including our pedestrian safety program and other related active transportation projects, the ATMP, bike lanes, multi-use trails. Significant work in terms of safety education for all modes, providing additional lanes on Great Lakes Boulevard to add capacity, and looking at the Spears Road and Cornwall Road projects that are currently underway to add additional lanes there. On the transit side, things such as our Oakville Transit app, the home to hub service, and bike racks on buses and soon at some of our bus stops as well. And then our goods movement study, so covering all the different modes of transportation. As noted earlier, our primary purpose for this review was to support the Development Charges bylaw. Changes in the Development Charges Act have changed how buses are included in the development charge. It's now a forward-looking calculation, but existing capacity needs to be used before new capacity or new buses can be charged to growth. Essentially, we need to fill up the buses with existing residents first, and then we can charge the new capacity we need to growth. Understanding that and looking at existing transportation preferences in Oakville, the transit mode split targets were reviewed through this process, taking a more moderate approach to expected ridership to 2031 for this review. We will be reviewing mode split targets again, with targets set to 2041 in our next TMP update. In Switching Gears 2013, we included a 20% transit mode split and 6% each for transportation demand management and active transportation. We split the transit mode share into local and regional transit, and the definitions for those really don't depend on who provides the service. Local transit would be trips that both start and end in Oakville, and regional transit trips were ones that started or ended in Oakville, regardless of who provided that service. Through the Transportation Master Plan review, we looked at 6 different mode split scenarios, starting with baseline conditions and going up to scenario E, which includes a 16% transit mode split and 6% each for active transportation and transportation demand management. We did this in an incremental basis, starting with scenario A, which really only increased the active transportation and transportation demand management shares. In scenario B, we looked at increasing local transit only, but not the regional share. And scenario C, we flipped that and did the increase to the regional transit and not the local transit share. Scenarios D and E increased both local and regional transit, with scenario E being the highest transit mode split at 16%. Should note that none of these quite get us to this switching gears target of 20%. These are all taking us along that path, though. Each scenario was modeled to examine the capacity impacts on our transportation network at a high level. The model includes all the projects that have been previously identified in Switching Gears and in the region's Transportation Master Plan, including their roads at their ultimate configurations. We were looking at the network to see what opportunities there were to add capacity elsewhere to address those deficiencies. Our model provides high-level results to show where congestion could be expected at that high level, but does not get down to the intersection level. It does provide, however, enough information for us to review how congestion changes as the mode splits are altered. We reviewed those results based on a number of factors to help us determine what opportunities there were to address congestion and also to help us select the mode split targets. Through our review, we found there are a few options for adding road capacity beyond what has already been identified in other studies. The ability to add capacity is influenced not only by the technical factors, but also by the potential for impacts to our community, our environmental targets, and our policy framework. As a result, we set our mode split targets after a multidisciplinary evaluation. We looked at how people are currently traveling, as this gives us an insight into the potential for mode shift. We looked at the change of an investment required to support modal shift, at how the different scenarios support our urban structure, and at performance factors related to things such as vehicles, kilometer traveled, congestion, emissions, and safety through collision reduction. Our urban structure and places to grow support higher modal shift and transit supportive development and densities and nodes and corridors. Scenarios D and E were the 2 scenarios with the highest transit mode split of the 6 that we looked at. And they were found to be very similar, though, at a capacity or congestion perspective, as well as when we looked at some of the other metrics related to things such as collision reduction or greenhouse gas emissions. However, there's a much greater level of investment required to support the increased transit ridership with scenario E. Based on that multidisciplinary review, the team advanced scenario D as the one to look at for determining which projects, both on the road side and the transit side, to be included in the DC bylaw. Scenario D includes a 12% transit mode split and 6% each for active transportation and TDM, transportation demand management. And this scenario provides the best balance between providing travel options, respecting community character, and the financial capability of the town to provide those services. To achieve scenario D will require approximately 73 new buses by 2031 to accommodate the growth in transit ridership. All of the projects that have been previously identified remained and were put forward through this DC bylaw update. There are limited opportunities beyond those, though, to add new lanes to town roads without impacting our stable neighborhoods or things such as our tree canopy or our policy framework. There were 2 projects that were advanced after looking at all the potential options. Those 2 are 8th line and 3rd line. So we've included in the DC bylaw update 2 projects, 8th line from Fauntleroy to Iroquois Shore, and 3rd line from North Service Road to Wycroft, adding a lane in each direction on each of those roads, and on 3rd line, adding transit priority measures with that. In addition, we continue to include intersection improvements as ways to increase localized capacity constraints. In summary, things are changing with respect to mobility, and we need to analyze the impacts of those changes, including things such as autonomous vehicles and mobility as a service, on how we will travel. We also need to continue to plan for transit supportive development in line with our urban structure. In consideration of the changing trends and new information that will be available, such as data from the Transportation Tomorrow survey and the final regional transportation plan for Metrolinx, a full update to the TMP is in time for the next development charges bylaw as recommended. This review was completed to support the DC bylaw and identify the roads projects necessary to support the expected growth so that they could be included in the charge. We also reviewed the mode split targets so that the required buses could be included in the bylaw as well. A more moderate approach to transit ridership targets was recommended through this review as an interim step, with a full review proposed in advance of the next development charges bylaw. As scenario D is only an interim step, we should continue to plan for increased transit mode share to that 20% target from switching gears, but perhaps on an extended timeline. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Stevens. Councillor O'Meara has a question for you.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. I just want to clarify, when we were doing our modeling and our transportation sort of review, were we including the Wycroft Bridge extension and the North Service Road along Brawny Creek?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, those projects were included because they'd been previously identified.
Okay, so those projects are factored into what we're doing?
That's correct.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Worship. This is just a clarification on page 116 with respect to the switching gears of the implementation of all the projects on GO. I see that Spears Road has been omitted on that, or is it coming in from a different venue?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this was just a list of some of the recommendations. That it wasn't meant to be an exhaustive list.
Make sure. I'd love to see it included. Thank you.
Councillor Elgar.
Thank you very much. Could you roll back a few slides where you showed a scenario D and a scenario E? I think I've got 5 slides. There, correct. So when I look at D there, it looks like 72% autos, and E looks like 76, and yet I think we're going with, are those, should they be reversed?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's an error on my part. We've labeled the scenarios backwards.
Thank you. Yeah, because it's something, I thought something looks wrong. So when you talk about baseline existing, what year, 88% is what I got out of it. What year is that for the car and 12% for the modal split?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we use the 2011 Transportation Tomorrow survey data.
So in 2011, we were at 12%, and switching gears, we were going to go to 32% in 2013, right? In 2013, when they did the study, we said we were going to 32%.
That's correct.
So now, instead of switching gears, I guess now we're saying switching into a lower gear, where we're going to go now to 24%.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the intent still, or the goal still would be to reach 20%, but perhaps on an extended timeline. We weren't able to model to 2041 to just look at pushing that out because we don't yet have all the best planning estimates data finalized. And so we have just tried to pull those numbers back using 2031 as opposed to pushing them out and modeling 2041.
Okay. Now, if I go over to the consultants that worked on the switching gears 2013, we had WSP, ACON, GLPI, Watson Associates, and Dillon Consulting. The cost for all those studies, do they go into the development cost charges that we can get back?
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do include that transportation master plan in the development charges.
Do you have a ballpark of
list.
what that cost is for those, just the 5 consulting companies?
Through Mr. Mayor, I can double check. It's listed in the development charges bylaw
Yeah.
that's before you.
Okay, now if we go on down, I wouldn't mind, we don't need it tonight, but I'd be curious going forward. Towards the bottom of page 117, you got, however, the way in which development charges are calculated for transit means that the majority of the capital costs associated with increased transit services is not eligible for development charges funding. I guess I want to know, what are the majority? How many million is that from our plan today?
Okay.
Because that's on the existing taxpayer base,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. As I mentioned, we do need to use up the capacity that exists in the transit system today before we can start allocating the growth to new growth in population or employment. And so there was an appendix to the development charges bylaw, which sets out the eligible DC and non-eligible development charges costs that identifies the total cost of the buses to 2026 as 25 million.
And that's to 2026?
That's correct.
So 5 million?
Yes,
Okay.
with 17.5 of that being non-DC eligible and 4 million being DC eligible.
The vast majority is actually on the current taxpayer then, based on the DC bylaw today that we have to abide by.
That's correct, right? Yeah. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Wow. I thank you for that. I don't think people have any idea what we're subsidizing here. Thanks.
Councillor Adams.
Thanks very much. I want to go back to something that we talked about at committee, which is the expansion of 8th line from Iroquois Shore Road to Falgarwood. I understand that there's a need to do an environmental study that goes along with it. At the time during the committee, I was concerned that the financial number that was attached to it was too small, that the actual figure would end up being significantly higher because you have to go over the diversion channel. And as a result of that crossing point, I thought the cost would be higher. Can you tell me how a different number ends up getting put into the development charges in a future year? And can you tell me when this project is likely to be seen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the project has just been identified as one to be reviewed. We do need to do a class environmental assessment in order to move that project forward, and through that we would be identifying the majority of the works that need to be done, and that would help us refine our cost estimates. Once that study is done, we would then provide those new cost estimates through the development charges study, and it would be incorporated into the subsequent update.
So the
So
the current figure uses the number that we've got,
Yes.
and the next time we do the update or revise our development charges, the builders at that time will be covering the difference in any given project.
Yeah.
This
Through
one
you-
and
yes.
others.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, as costs are updated, they get added, the more up-to-date cost estimates get included. And sorry, Councillor Adams, I did miss the second part of your question, and we've included that project as a 2029 project.
So it's quite some time out.
Yes, for the
And
purposes
that's
of
liable
the
to
bylaw.
move.
That's entirely possible.
Very good. Thank you.
Councillor Grant.
Thank you. Recently, in talking about a lot of what's going on north of Dundas, with the secondary plans, we've talked about the fact that the modal split doesn't seem to be working, that there's no actual parking for people if they want to have visitors, or even in their own homes, really. Now that we actually have evidence that this modal split's not catching up to what we hoped, is there any work, and this may not be for you, it might be for another member of our town staff, but are we at least working hand in hand with our planning department to make sure that now that we have this evidence that it's not working, that we alter our plans for North Oakville so that we can at least get better parking?
Yeah. Did you want to handle it? I'm going to.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we have actually, through the Livable Oakville, certainly had a lot of questions on parking, particularly in North Oakville, and we are committed to do some work in looking at what are the opportunities we have for resolving some of the parking issues in a multitude of ways. in moving forward. So yes, that certainly is on the package of work that we have to be doing.
Great, now that we have evidence, at least it's not just something we're spitballing, so thank you very much.
Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Other municipalities are achieving the same shortfalls, I take it, in terms of hitting the split?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, transit ridership is variable across the region, but I don't think anybody's quite reaching the targets on the timelines that they initially expected.
Thank you. Are you aware of whether their downward forecast is similar to ours, or just wondering if this is something that we're all going through and if there are any ways of being able to move the needle so we can get around a little easier?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe everybody is anxiously waiting the finalization of the regional transportation plan by Metrolinx, and then the discussions that will happen afterwards in terms of how we implement that, how we move folks onto transit and out of their cars in order to support greater mobility throughout the region. So it's an ongoing discussion at many municipalities and many transit agencies about how we're actually going to facilitate that shift and encourage that shift in travel behavior.
Great, thank you.
All right, Council, I wonder if we're ready to make a decision, and if you are, I need a mover and seconder. Councillor O'Meara moves, Councillor Knoll seconds, all those in favor, and the Transportation Master Plan is approved. Now, the development charges background study, which is a pretty big event. We're going to start off with a delegation from Mr. Bobby Bula. Mr. Bula, welcome, and come to the center and share your information with Council.
Mr. Mayor and members of Council, what I have to say is something that we need seriously to think about. As we all know, the way development is going, everything is towards intensification. Now, to try and help people who are going to rent in these apartments or buy condominiums, we need to help them so that the prices can stay lower than they are. And the one thing I personally feel that is not being thought of is the time of paying the development charge when an application is made for the permit, when it takes 2 years or 2.5 years to complete the buildings before even one person moves in, whether he's a purchaser or a tenant. And what happens in our industry is we take a look at the cost, whatever the cost is to us, and we want to make certain percent profit. That means the people, the end users, are getting hit. So we're not helping affordability the way it's set up. I would really love if the mayor and members of council will direct their staff to take a good look at saying, can we collect the DCs at a time of occupancy, when a person is actually moving in and he is going to cost the municipality, whether he's picking up garbage or fixing a pothole on the street. Till nobody's moved in, they're not costing us. So let's seriously think about it, and I'm coming to the town of Oakville first. I know we're going to need to get a buy-in from the region, but Mr. Mayor, I really need for you to push this. And any of the member of council, this is for my children, my grandchildren, and yours. Let's see what we can do to make it a little more affordable, whether it's rental or purchase. If anybody has any questions, please ask me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bula, for your information. Councillor Elgar has a question for you.
Yeah, you raised an interesting point. What is your percentage profit that you mentioned you like to make?
Between you and me, everybody has different percentages, depending on when they purchase the land and what their financing is. But if I have to go and get the money from the bank or from any lender, he's charging me interest. and I'm not going to pass that particular rate across to the end user. I'm going to add a couple of points on. So why don't we, as a municipality, think through, these are our children.
You do realize, like just on the other item we were talking about, on the transportation, where we are already kicking in, just on the transit alone, 17 million of the existing taxpayers. You realize that?
Yes. Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor, one of the things that nobody has thought about yet, and
Mr. Bula, with respect, you're not really speaking to the item before us tonight. We're talking about the development charges study, and we're now debating an idea that you're interested in promoting. I don't think it's a good use of our time. I'd like everybody to agree that we'll stand down from that.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I'm out of here. Just one simple thing. Next time you approve any project that has got multiple tenants or purchasers, think about trying to give them 2-year free pass on transit. Get them used to using the transit. That's the trick.
Mr. Bula, thank you very much for your time. All right, we're going to turn our attention now to staff, and we're going to receive the summary of the background study presentation that we're looking forward to here now, I think.
Mr. Mayor, we did not prepare a report. We're happy to answer any questions.
All right.
Having presented to the DC Steering
I'll just
Committee
note for the public that we have a Development Charges Study Committee, and it's received this matter in great detail. I was thinking we might have something for the benefit of the public. But, Council, are there any questions?
Your
Councillor
Worship,
Elger.
I have been asked to bring to your attention a very minor...
I'll come back to you in a second for that. Councillor Elger.
Mayor Burton, I really don't have any questions. I really would like to see a change in the Development Charges Act, but we can only do what we can do with what the province has given us to work with. So I'll move the staff recommendation.
All right, I need to ask Mr. Lalonde to read the change to the recommendation that we need you to include in your motion.
Recommendation 3, we would like to add to the end of Recommendation 3 following Addendum Number 1 dated February 8, 2018, and Addendum Number 2 dated February 23, 2018, which contains some minor wording changes and some page changes.
So moved by Councillor Elger and seconded by Councillor Giddings. All those in favor? And that is carried. The Development Charges background study is adopted, and the Development Charges Bylaw 2018-001 is passed, and the new bylaw shall take effect at 12:01 a.m. on February 27th, 2018. Council, you have a confidential item to ratify the Unifor 1256 contract. Could I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Chisholm, Councillor Hutchins, all in favor? And that is carried. Now, we have item number 12 from ASC and item number 9 from ASC. And on item number 12, which is the OYS lease and memorandum of understanding, I want to try. Let's try to explain how we're going to proceed here. We're going to receive delegations. We have 20 listed delegations. If we haven't run out of meeting time by the end of that, we will then hear presentations from staff. Council will need, when it comes to land matters, Council needs to receive advice subject to solicitor-client privilege, and will repair or retire into a session closed to the public for the purpose of those communications. And then we will come back out and we will have some kind of a motion to try to deal with this thing. Right now, we have a motion coming from the committee, which I believe everybody who's interested knows. And we have I have a motion that I'm going to be asking to substitute for that, which I'll ask the clerk to put on the overhead so that people can see it. And if you'll attend that, or Madam Clerk, if you'd go back, you can help move it down and get the Zoom to focus. And there we go. Now all we need is focus. It's starting to, well, it was starting to look focused. I'm glad we got autofocus going. All right, well, while the control room is dealing with focus, I'll just explain that it is my intention, my goal through all of this, to continue to have the OYS operate in the harbor. I believe that that's true of everybody on council. This motion, if it's adopted, would put into effect the sentiments expressed at 4:30 in an email from the OYS leaders. It gets to the same place in a different way. The essence of this boils down to the lease, which expired in 2015, is extended with no changes to the end of October 31st, 2018. During that time, we will negotiate, I hope in good faith, with the on both sides, with OYS for an arrangement that will allow continued operations, including occupation and operation of the facilities at the property after October 31st, as long as we can come to an arrangement that doesn't impede creation or operation of a town waterside destination that would serve the public and not disturb the neighborhood nor prevent the reasonable operation of the OYS as a yacht club. So I hope that scoping of council's ambition helps people understand, one, that there's no intention of killing OYS, and there's every intention of assuring public access to the waterfront. There is also an extensive harbor improvement plan not yet completed, which we will have information presented on when we get after the delegations from staff. So so this is where I am going to suggest council go. Council is free to go anywhere it wants, and if this doesn't carry, who knows where we'll go. Councillor Adams?
Just a procedural question. I wonder if in this event we might have our staff presentation before the delegations to help set the table, I'll say.
I have no objection to that. Any member of council? Councillor Duddick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, maybe this is procedural, and I appreciate the comments that you provided. They've captured the sentiment of what I think has basically been discussed thus far. But I'm wondering about some revisions to the motion that you're recommending, in that option 3 is terminating the MOU. From what I've had an opportunity to go over the report, and rather than debate it now, but I just wondered if we got some framework of it, it might assist us rather than having people thinking we're going that route when we may not. The reason being that option 3 was that staff entertains proposals for, that was the original one, but yours that saying reject option 1, if they've signed the MOU, as I've clearly recognized, then that means option 1 is fait accompli, and option 2 from the original report would be more in keeping with an amendment of the MOU to deal with that waterside provision. And then you could add something, if you so wish, regarding a time factor, but I'm just concerned that option 3 isn't really capturing what you're trying to portray.
We could delete the words in the first sentence and choose as option 3 because they're irrelevant to the rest of the motion. Section 3 of this motion is the operative part. So just stroke out and chooses option 3.
Okay, I'm sorry, Your Worship, but when option 3 that you're referencing says cease negotiations with OYS and terminate the current lease, that's what you're referring to?
I'm suggesting a new course. Try reading. Does this help you if you delete the words and chooses option 3 from line 1 on the screen?
No, because option 3 still makes reference to cease negotiations with OYS. But I'm doing the original ASC. Are you going with yours that was sent in ASC?
I'm saying this is what I'm going to propose on the screen here. And I'm hearing your suggestion, and I accept, if I understand you correctly, I think what you're asking can be achieved by deleting those 4 words and chooses option 3. On the screen, not on the report.
So, just so, and again, for clarity, if I'm confused, I can only imagine what members of the public feel. Option 3 then is what you had in the ASC minutes, your motion, or are you referring to the original?
I'm not referring to anything in the report. I'm referring to 3 clauses of a motion in front of you on the screen.
Thank you. So what you're saying is option 3 in this motion, not option 3 in the original report.
It's not an option, it's a paragraph 3, section 3.
Thank you. That's completely different. I saw option 3 in it.
But you've done us a service. You've pointed out that we don't need the 4 words and chooses option 3. Everybody can strike that out. Madam Clerk, you could strike that out. Councillor Elgar.
I appreciate what we're trying to do here on the fly. I guess I'm trying to understand, Mayor, that the wording of your number 3 or paragraph 3, as long as there is no impediment to creation and operation of a town waterside attraction. I noticed you used the word destination. And I'm wondering, can you expand on what you mean by that? And also, to serve the public that would not disturb the neighborhood and not prevent the reasonable, when you say reasonable operation of OYS, would it be not just, why would we have reasonable? Because they'd operate, they've always, I would assume, been operating in a regular manner, which is, why put in reasonable? It looks like, I want them to be able to continue what they're doing today, tomorrow.
Right. We can remove the word reasonable.
And can you expand on creation and operation of a town?
That's to be discovered through negotiations and discussions with the club to find a compatible use that will work with them and with the public. So the point of this additional language, the bold underline, is to scope down and reassure people that we're not trying to build Ferris wheels, water slides, or amusement parks.
So what are we trying to build? If it's not a Ferris wheel, a water slide, or amusement park,
It might be sufficient if there was the opportunity for the public to participate, maybe a small restaurant type effort could happen.
Let's put that in, because I think if that's what we think.
I don't want to negotiate in council.
Well,
I just want to, and I don't think we should. I think we should let the discussions ensue. By June, I think we could have an agreement.
And that's my concern with October 31st, because you're going to be pulling boats out. And I don't know whether if you go down there, you might notice there are a lot of sailboats sitting out of the water and a lot of masts sitting there. And like, I hate seeing everybody sitting, waiting. Can we say June? That it would be done by June and have it, like, I just think, get some finality done on this. Like, it's been going on, as you say, 2015, the lease was up, but if we said June and then everybody's working towards it, then I think people could agree, and then at least they're going to know before you get into fall that something has happened. Like, if we want to put if we want to work with them to put a restaurant, fine, let's put the cards on the table if that's the case.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate what you were trying to do. I think it was an earnest attempt to put the motion in front of council so that everybody can have a sense, but now we're starting to negotiate the motion before we've heard delegations or staff presentation. I don't believe that's appropriate, in my opinion. So I would ask, as part of my point of order, that we proceed with delegations.
Thank you, Councillor. I believe that Councillor Elgar is providing valuable service here. I believe that it's in order. I'm subject to overrule by council, but I believe it's in order. I'd be happy to insert in the appropriate place here with a goal of achieving agreement before the end of summer.
I love it. Then I think we got something we can all work with and the people in the audience can understand also. So that to me gives at least some certainty that we're going to finally get this resolved and hopefully to everyone's agreement. So,
all right.
Thank you.
So we're as clear as we can be on that. Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Thank you, Councillor Elgar. Madam Clerk, would you call the delegations?
First delegation is Andre Bees, here to speak to item 12.
Welcome, sir. Council looks forward to your information. You have up to 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, and good evening. His Worship Mayor Burton, honorable council members, and the public. My name is Andre Bees, and I am a resident of Oakville and have been for 30 years. I'm a trained automotive technician and both run a business and work on automobiles to this day. A 40-year passion, I'll admit that. My other passions are first and foremost my family, followed closely by sailing. This third passion has been adopted by my family, and we are spending a great amount of our time in the world of amateur competitive sailing. This passion was cultivated in Oakville, at OIS. It takes a village, they say, to raise children, and the town of Oakville provided OIS the footprint to train my children and approximately 9,000 plus other children in the rules of wind, water, and safe boat handling. We may all hear other speakers talk to the training of sailors through a school format. Amongst us today are representatives from the provincial and national levels who all work towards ensuring these grassroots level schools, like OIS has, are top-notch. As this year's Commodore, my primary concern and job tonight is to speak to the possibilities OIS would have, creating a cooperative synergy with the town of Oakville. It has become very apparent that we, as a part of this community, share and learn how to partner with the town of Oakville. Learning means education, and teaching ourselves to exist in this model will be a benefit to all. Much like the town of Oakville has shared usage with Pine Glen Soccer Club, Oakville Gymnastics Club, we feel the need to become associated with the town of Oakville as well, as these community organizations have done. OIS has examples of sharing. The Oakville Trafalgar High School robotics team and the Oakville robotics team have used our indoor space to run their programs. And for the late Councillor Max Kahn, who hosted 2 events per season in our clubhouse. We understand these cooperations need to grow in number, a plan we would be most anxious to work within. OIS would be a perfect candidate to work within the 2016-2018 Key Action Plan to partner with the town community groups and services with our sailing school. OIS is in the Parks and Recreational Guidebook offering our school services now, and registrations are open. The town of Oakville has a program that speaks to health, safety, and mindfulness, which the OIS knows would be a proper fit. I volunteer this is the right time to propose and promote a mutually beneficial working arrangement with the town of Oakville. Volunteerism has created and kept the OIS afloat for the past 71 years, and it has existed in the town of Oakville. A minimum of 3,000 hours per year makes this happen. We love, we volunteer, we maintain our passion for sailing every day, and would be very happy to share this with our community. And with hope, we can. The doors are open, and our intention to continue working in our community. I ask you to please support OIS, a vibrant and financially responsible organization, our mandate simply being to offer sailing as a sailing center of excellence, and to allow us to share this all with the town of Oakville. My ask is to vote against the motion 3 that has been tabled and have a motion to accept the current MOU put back on. Thank you very much. We have a short video now too that we can watch.
All right. Go ahead.
The Oakville Yacht Squadron has been part of the fabric of the community in Oakville. The Oakville Yacht Squadron has been part of the fabric of the community in Oakville for now 70 years.
Oakville is blessed with 2 natural harbors. It's a charming village atmosphere here in downtown Oakville and is well renowned for its many fine restaurants, fine shops, beautiful parks along the lake where families can come and picnic, and it's extremely picturesque.
It's a great place to raise a family, and it has a fabulous waterfront, so if you live here, it's a lot of fun.
Oakville Yacht Squadron is very fortunate to be right beside the downtown, and the first Oakville Yacht Squadron was put together in 1946 by a group of enthusiasts.
The club was formed just after World War II by some returning veterans who just wanted a place to sail little boats. Part of it is they wanted their kids to enjoy the sport as well, and so it was designed as a family club where it was self-help and everybody pitched in to do things.
OYS is one of those wonderful clubs where the members are all involved in the activities of the club. Everything that we do involves other members. There's always volunteers, and it's really part of the fabric of the club to be participating in the different activities with your fellow club members.
It's a home away from home. You come to the club to see your close friends, to relax, spend some time, and do something you love.
It's just that we all share a common interest in sailing, and we're all in it together to make this club work.
On the water, we can be competitors when the starting signal goes, but fundamentally and ultimately, we're friends.
Everyone's just happy to be down here by the water. You know, your life is just more relaxed.
When the sailing season hits, there's Sail Pass, which is a big event honoring the Commodore, and we salute him and show our sign of respect, and kicks off our sailing season. We have Wednesday night racing, which is a weekly event.
If there's 2 boats on the water, they're racing. On race nights, of course, there's quite an energy as everybody's prepping, the crews are getting the sails ready. We end up all going out of the harbor at the same time. It's quite a flotilla headed out, 30 or 40 boats. Lots of people sail with their children on board, but it's very serious.
When we're sailing, there's so much energy. People are trying to get their sails in as quick as possible. There's so much adrenaline pumping. It's a place where you can learn and you can thrive through sailing.
Friday is a very social night where we have people come down and just enjoy a Friday afternoon, evening, and barbecue some of their own food and have some good salads and desserts.
The biggest event of the year is the regatta, 3 days of sailing and racing, and some cruising. We have great meals, and again, it's a big party. We socialize a lot.
We're attracting people from around North America. We encourage people to come, and we have a visitor's dock where boats will come in, and then they're welcome to stay for 1 day or 2 days or 3 days.
We're now as much a cruising club as we are a racing club, and we have reciprocal arrangements with many of the clubs around the lake. They send us their cruisers and we go visit their clubs. There's a fantastic sailing school if you want to learn to sail.
We run about 150 people through the sailing school, young kids and adults, every year.
If you're 7 years old to 99, we have a program for you.
We have a CANSAIL 1 through 6 system. We try and get them out on the water as much as possible.
You see the kids develop a lot throughout the weeks, and it's fun to see them grow up, and they make friends at sailing camp, and then how they're still friends.
It's just great to see these kids enjoying being outside as opposed to not being outside and being cooped up in front of their personal device.
A perfect day at sailing school is you get your boats rigged super fast, good couple hours on the water in the morning, sailing, practicing skills, and then coming in off the water, easy de-rig, and then going pier jumping to kind of celebrate.
Our sailing school is, I would have to say, one of the best on the lake. It's one of the largest, it's one of the most continuously in operation, and of course we've had 5 members of this very small club have represented Canada in sailing in the Olympics, most recently in the Rio Games.
My life's passion has been sailing and representing Canada on the national team.
And all that was because of my foundation of my upbringing at the Oakville Yacht Squadron and learning everything I know about sailing here at this club, but also the Oakville Yacht Squadron's Corinthian Fund to help aspiring athletes and people representing Canada and OAS on the international stage.
My kids went through the sailing program here and they're racing with me now.
We joined the OYS about 20 years ago. We've great friends down here because we all have sailing in common.
Our family has been a member of the club for just a little over 3 years now, and soon our kids will be super sailors.
I've been a member for about 12 years.
We've got 3 generations associated with sailing here in Oakville. We have 4 generations of our family that sail in this club.
We want to see families come out, grow with the club.
There's a constant effort to build a community of like-minded people, and we really are just sailors here.
You'll be automatically accepted. Doesn't matter who you are, where you come from.
Anybody who's interested in getting out on the water should come down and see us and feel us and enjoy what we do. It's a sport that anybody in a family from 8 to 80 can participate in. It's a great way to spend the summer, and it's not expensive.
We welcome all members of the community in Oakville to come down, check out our facility, learn what we're all about, get a feel for how things run and how things work here. Because we're not just a sailing center in Oakville, we're actually a landmark in Oakville that's been around for over 70 years, and we'd love for you to come and contribute and be a part of something great.
Thank you very much for the extended video of the one we saw last time. Madam Clerk, would you, Councillor Elger.
I have a question of Andre, please. Andre,
Yes.
that was a fantastic video, by the way, but my question is, based on the latest recommendation which you have seen, does it make sense? Would you be, like OYS, willing to work with the town? Because what I'm hearing is they want to, it looks like there's some members of the public feel like they can't go down and sit down there and have a drink and a sandwich or whatever in the restaurant. And I'm wondering, like, I think that's what I'm getting out of this right now. And I'm wondering, is OYS in favor of doing something like that? Because I realize you've opened up the walking area completely around.
Yes, to His Worship. We are very much, as I indicated in my several times in my talk, we are very much interested in working with the town of Oakville. Our interest is that we don't see that we have an opportunity to negotiate on our lease. That's really what our interest is.
Okay, so you're not against, like we maybe get a big kumbaya here if that is really your intent to help work with the town on that one thing, because everything else seems to be resolved from what I understand, correct?
You're correct.
As far as the walkways, everything's open, the gates are down?
That's correct.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Questions?
Yes, thank you for your presentation. You saw what the mayor put up there I don't know whether we can throw it up again.
I have it here too.
Yes, please, if you can. And I've also seen the...
So we should put it up again, and Councillor, you should refer to the screen because it's been adjusted by Councillor Elger and me.
Okay.
Perhaps I'll try to read it to you. Can I assume that you can read the typewritten part? No. Can we get more focus from the control room?
Turn the lights.
Pardon?
Turn the lights.
Oh.
Lights.
Well, we need a little technical help here from the control room.
And focus.
I will read it. When everything settles down, I'll read it. That staff entertained proposals from OYS for continued operations, including occupation and operation of facilities at the property after October 31st, 2018, as long as there's no impediment to creation and operation of a town waterside destination. That's Councillor Elger's scribble. Mine is worse, so I'm not criticizing. To serve the public that would not disturb the neighborhood nor prevent the operation of the OYS as a yacht club, with a proposal authorized by OYS members by the end of June. That staff prepare to operate the facility without OYS involvement if necessary. All right?
No, is that a question?
No. People were, sorry. Is everybody able to understand it, read it or understand it? I'm not asking if you agree with it. I'm asking if you can read it. Thank you. All right. Councillor Hutchins was asking questions.
Okay, well, my question was that I'm also aware of the OYS MOU presented. Now, you're asking us to, for the council accept option 1, okay? However, oh, it's gone blurry again. But option 1, as you can see, is being rejected by council in the proposed amendment. And option 3 is going to be put in there. And option 3, as far as I can see, gives you everything you need. It talks about you operating the OYS organization. Option 4 only comes in if there's no agreement. Okay? So I don't understand what you're asking us to do when we're saying we're going to give you and allow the OIS to continue to operate, provided the immediate removal of any fencing blocking public access to the boardwalk and public trail and system. You've already done that.
Right.
Right? You're going to be continuing on 1, granting continued use of the property under the current terms of lease until the end of 2018, the boating season, October 31st. Further down here, it says you're going to be negotiating and come to an agreement by the end of June. And if you don't, only then the staff prepare to operate the facility without OYS involvement, if necessary. Therefore, you're getting everything here, as I understand and read from your MOU. Am I reading something incorrect?
I think the confusion perhaps is in item 1, word 3, that says rejects, where it should say accepts. That, I believe, is the greatest confusion we have.
Okay.
Bring it back to me. I'll fix that.
Let's try and fix that. Because as far as I can see, we're standing up and we're starting arguing it past each other when we're both agreeing. So let's cut to the chase and get this thing done.
Point of order here, Your Worship. I'm just not sure. Are we negotiating this motion with every delegation that's going to come up here?
Apparently we are, yes.
I mean, can we just hear from the delegates and then hear from staff and then have a conversation about what we're doing with this motion? Or we'll be here till next week under this way, for seeing it.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara, for your information.
If I may, could we possibly just retype that so it's legible for people in the back?
We don't have a typewriter, Councillor. All right. This is pretty clear. Council grants continued use of the property under the current terms of the lease until the end of the 2018 boating season, October 31st. Does anybody in the club have a problem with that? Yes. You want it longer? Shorter? The MOU is not a lease.
No, we understand.
Well, we don't have a good experience with that, and that's what this is about. So, look, all right. Councillor Hutchins, you have your answer, I believe. Any other questions of the delegation? Madam Clerk, please call the next delegation.
Thank you very much.
Next delegation is Rich O'Hare.
Good evening, everyone. Your Worship, members of council, and guests. I guess I have a short talk, but I do want to make sure that we all, oh, sorry, I've covered it, understand the different options that were considered at the Administrative Services Committee and what the resolution, Your Worship, that you put forward, because I think there may be some confusion about the items on this list relative to the actual options that were considered by or put forward by staff at the Administrative Services Committee.
Would you like that explained?
I think it would be helpful, yes, for everyone.
Staff presented options to the committee. The committee made a decision, and this is an evolved version of the decision that the committee made.
So this is the committee's decision, but the options that were discussed, option one being acceptance of the MOU.
The committee's not limited to the options presented by staff. And so if you will, this is a hybrid of all of that.
Okay, but it did reference two items that were part of the staff's recommendation.
Yeah, it's a hybrid. So these are clauses, numbered clauses of a motion. This is not a report. These are not options. Reports have options. Decisions have clauses, I guess I'm trying to say.
And so in my report, I'll be referring to option one of the original staff recommendations, which was acceptance of the memorandum of understanding that's been in negotiations between town staff and the OIS for over 2 years. A lot of work going into that.
So our concern is that you may be confusing an MOU, which is not binding, for a lease, and it's not a lease. So accepting the MOU doesn't get us to a lease, doesn't get us to the end of this process. We need something with a deadline. That's what this is trying to do.
Okay, but this is putting in place a whole new requirement that was not discussed in the entirety of the last 2 years, and to put a deadline on that was something that could be as
Sir, at 4:30 this evening, we received a communication from your club suggesting that it was comfortable with cooperating with the town to build this option.
Absolutely.
If you meant that, this achieves that.
What we're comfortable with is to move forward with a certainty around the continued operation of the club.
We're giving you that.
Certainty until October.
Well,
we need
with the
certainty.
MOU, you have no certainty, sir. You still have to finish a lease. The lease hasn't even, one of our frustrations is there's still no lease because you haven't even got to the point where you agree on, the elements of a lease. So, if you want certainty, this gives it to you. It gives council and the public certainty too. And it stops, we've been discussing this with you since before your lease expired 3 years ago.
No, not since before the lease expired.
Are we debating with the speaker, Mr. Chair?
So, Mr. O'Hara, I hope I've answered your question, and I look forward to your delegation.
Thank you. So, my name is Rich O'Hara, and I'm speaking on behalf of the folks here from the Oakville Yacht Squadron. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to share some information with you that will highlight the willingness of the membership to reach an agreement on a new lease so we can move forward with our exciting plans for facility and services renewal. Sailing is a social activity, as you can see by the turnout here this evening, an activity that connects us with the natural surroundings and challenges us to accept the old cliche that the journey is far more important than the destination. As technology controls ever more aspects of our lives, the simple act of trusting the wind and currents to deliver us across an expanse of water is a magical, timeless experience, an experience that can only be achieved by pushing off the dock and boldly heading out onto the lake. While the need for sailing as transportation may be long extinct, the passion for adventure and the desire to explore are as true today as they were when the first settlers arrived at the mouth of 16 Mile Creek some 2 centuries ago. I'm always amazed at how this universal passion is still present today. OIS brings together people from many different backgrounds to pursue our common interest in cruising, navigation, racing, boat building and maintenance, water safety, instructing, and craftsmanship. We are a family, and sailing is a family pastime that can be enjoyed by people of all ages. OIS offers a venue for people with a passion for sailing to come together in celebration of these common interests and to develop their skills to embark on whatever journey they may seek. We are very fortunate to have such amazing harbors here in Oakville, and we want to ensure they are accessible to the community for all activities, including sailing. After 2 long years of negotiation with town staff, we believe the terms defined in the MOU recommended by staff will provide OIS with the ability to continue our operations, ensuring there is safe, affordable place to enjoy sailing in Oakville. We have 50 years of experience running our community sailing school programs. OIS is very proud of the success our sailors have achieved over the years, and we know that fostering a love of the sport here in Oakville is essential to develop future members for our club. It is both an honor and a responsibility to share our knowledge and passion with all those who have an interest so that we can spark the flame that will fan the next generation of sailors. However, like most sports, sailing has become more and more competitive, and we need to keep up with our peer organizations in other municipalities. While Oakville has produced many successful sailors, they are often forced to leave Oakville to fully develop their skills at regional and national sailing centers. OIS has a vision to change this and become a sailing center of excellence for the Western GTA. With your cooperation, we can create the facilities and programming that will attract the best coaches, allowing our sailors to continue their development right here in Oakville. As a sailing center of excellence, OIS will offer all levels of programming from Learn to Sail through community racing to competitive Team Ontario level racing. We invite the town to embark on this journey in partnership with OIS to ensure sailing remains an integral part of the most livable community in Canada. I urge you to reconsider the ASC resolution and approve the signed MOU so OIS can fulfill this vision to offer improved sailing services for the community. We are open to consider further waterside activities for the public, providing our sailing focus is preserved. I trust you understand that a boating club needs access to the water, and the MOU addresses this requirement. We have been dealing fairly and openly with staff to retain this fundamental requirement in our lease. You now have an opportunity to show your support here tonight and join us on this exciting adventure. Thank you for listening.
Councillor Elgar.
Richard, thanks for your presentation and what you said and where you ended also. But with what we have up here right now, number 4 has now been scratched completely on here. That was on. Let's say that the lease will be done by the end of June. And the only thing different from the Memorandum of Understanding is maybe, as what we have in here, it looks like the public maybe want to go down and have a sandwich or a drink at the restaurant. And
which restaurant, Mr. Elgar?
Well, I shouldn't say restaurant. Where do people eat there now? There is nothing
at the picnic tables.
At picnic tables only. So that would be the difference, where there would have to be just to go down with picnic tables. Now, is it licensed down there? I'm just curious.
Sir, with all due respect, these are very good questions. The OIS is not opposed to considering this, but it's not something we can possibly hope to define and consider by the end of June. This is we're not an establishment. We know how to sail. We know how to teach people to sail, and we know how to have a couple of good parties.
Okay.
But we're not in a position to come back to town with a proposal to say we can run a public facility today. We're certainly open to the idea of it, but we don't want it to be tied into the conditions of our lease.
Well, okay, this is what we need to hear.
Yeah, does that seem reasonable? That we want to have a lease to continue operating the way we operate, and if a clause is in that lease to say the OIS is permitted to offer a commercial service to the public, I think we would certainly be open to further discussions down the road to achieve that, because I could see it benefiting the club. But this is a requirement that came up on Tuesday evening of this past week that was not discussed at all for the past 2 years.
Okay.
So I think it would behoove us to review town staff's initial recommendations, to consider approving the MOU so that we can move forward with a license. The details are there, the financial elements are defined, the land use elements are defined. All we need to do now is sign it and move forward with the legal process to get it binding.
Okay, and I hear you. I'm glad you, with your answers, I'm pleased to hear the answers you have given us. We just have to work out these little legal things, I guess, with regard to, even if the lease is signed based with the Memorandum of Understanding, which I understand have already signed.
That's correct.
That you're fine with that?
Yes.
So now I can see we probably will be going in camera at some point in some day here to get this all resolved.
I thank you.
Councillor Duddick.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rich, for your presentation and having the opportunity to discuss the matter at length. Basically, and I fully appreciate your concerns regarding the MOU as it was presented, is the one that you're willing to move forward with some certainty in terms of our staff coming back with a firm lease that both parties can enter into. The other issue, the additional issue that came to light at last Tuesday's meeting is separate from that, in that it wasn't part of the original MOU. Even though there's a clear indication that there's a willingness to participate, it's how we deal with that portion of the discussion going forward. In other words, that can't be June, okay? We have something different, either, I don't know, deadlines or whatever, but to have sufficient opportunity to have discussions within your membership and the public at large. So looking at the original report, option 2 was proceed with an amended version of the MOU, and that's basically the way I see it now, in that we're saying yes to option 1, as are your club, but with an amended version which we're going to give staff direction for. Is that address the concerns in regards to the deadline of that separate issue being June?
Yeah, I think the time frame for developing any form of a partnership on a commercial operation, considering how long it took us to get to where we are today, June is just unreasonable. And what I'm most concerned about in the way this is presented is, if we don't achieve that June timeline, what is the repercussions to the club? Does that mean that the deal is completely off the table? Does that mean that option 4, that the staff prepare to operate independent of OIS? I mean, it's very ambiguous what happens after that. So
I believe our staff will provide some certainty, I would imagine, especially once we go in camera, in terms of providing sufficient wording that will give you that comfort, but fully appreciate where you're coming from. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for meeting with Councillor Listrina and I at great length over the weekend. I appreciate the discussion. We've been having a back and forth about this waterside attraction or amenity space, or whatever term is to be used. And I think one of the issues that might come up in discussions going forward is who might operate a kiosk or something that might sell the sandwich and the drink that Councillor Elgar's been talking about. And I'm not sure if that's something that the OIS would ever want to contemplate being the operator of. I suspect that might be a conversation about who else might operate that kiosk or that amenity. Is that, what are your thoughts on that? Do you have a thought on that?
Again, they would be my personal thoughts on that, and it's not something I'm really feel I can represent the OIS on at this meeting.
I understand.
I would suggest that there's a significant amount of property in the vicinity of the OIS establishment that could be equally used for a waterside attraction. There's a cabin, a historic cabin that's been sitting unoccupied and unused for some 3 years now that may be a good location for a kiosk. The town already owns that location. Again, these are my personal and my personal recommendations or thoughts, but to just say, honing in on the facility of OIS and thinking that it's a great place to open up a public venue is certainly a concern that quite frankly surprised all of us last week. So
thank you. You guys make it look fun, I guess. So, anyway, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. O'Hare, for your information. Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation?
The next delegation is Bill Frank.
Welcome, Mr. Frank. Council looks forward to your information.
Your Worship, Mr. Mayor, councillors,
town staff. I'm Bill Frank. I'm a 32-year resident of the town of Oakville from Ward 5. I'm also a 28-year member of the Oakville Yacht Squadron, and I was Commodore back in 2014. So I'm a past Commodore, otherwise known as a regular member of the club. I've been a member of the Oakville Yacht Squadron negotiating team since Commissioners Bell and Lalonde called us to a meeting to explore the issue in December of 2015. Just so you know, the videos that you saw today and last Tuesday, those videos were displayed at the Toronto Boat Show and the Oakville Yacht Squadron booth promoting both OAS and the town of Oakville. So those videos are used from a promotion for the town as well as OAS. At last week's Administrative Services meeting, questions were asked of town staff if town could run the sailing school. Since the questions were clearly unexpected, the answers were a little vague. I do feel qualified myself to comment on this since I was a sailing school director for 6 years, from 2005 to 2010. So what is the sailing school? You've seen the video. It's an opportunity for youth, ages 7 through young adults, to gain sailing schools, understand safety protocols of being on the water, progress as recreational sailors or as competitive athletes, develop leadership skills and training skills. It's a life skills school, not just a sailing school. It's a program that allows young people to grow into their leadership abilities and assume responsibilities as instructors and as leaders. And I know that because all 3 of my sons gained valuable life skills as they went through the OAS Sailing School, on the race team, into coaching positions, and assume responsibilities of the head instructor. Sailing schools like ours are run by community boating clubs, and we rely on volunteers for direction and supervision. If you were to cost out the volunteer hours that go into it, you would end up with a program that is not cost viable to members of the public. And over 80% of our participants in sailing school are not members of OAS. They come from the general public. If you take a sailing school operation and you make it not viable, you're jeopardizing 12 summer jobs on the waterfront, as well as a great Oakville community program. So we're asking you, please leave the OAS Sailing School in the hands of OAS. So further, I'd like to thank the delegates and OAS supporters for showing up today to display solidarity for the continued operation of OAS. So thank you very much. You're going to hear from our friends from the greater sailing community, Sail Canada and Ontario Sailing. We reached out to them for support letters, and you have copies of those letters in front of you. But those organizations recognized that this was more important than a letter. They're here in person to provide you a province-wide, national, and international perspective on the Oakville Yacht Squadron. Further to that, I've been asked by the Parkhill family to deliver a letter from Lee Parkhill. He's an international athlete, Pan Am Games medalist, Canadian Olympic representative in Rio 2016, representing Canada in Oakville. The Parkhills are unable to be here because they're dealing with a serious family illness. Lee's letter. Lee's unable to be here. Didn't know this was coming up, but he did provide a letter. It arrived this morning. Dear Town of Oakville, Mayor Burton, and Council. My name is Lee Parkhill. I'm a lifelong resident of the Town of Oakville, a member of the Oakville Yacht Squadron, and have proudly represented both the town and the club as a member of the Olympic and Paralympic teams competing in sailing. It is with great displeasure to learn that the town and the club have hit a crossroads, and the longevity of the club and the benefit it brings to all of the town's citizens who wish to participate is in jeopardy. I know you have and will receive countless stories from club members and the community, so I will narrowly focus on sport and children. The Yacht Squadron Sailing School is open to the public and provides a unique opportunity for hundreds of our town's children to get active on the water every summer. Learning to sail gives children the thrill of independence teaches them problem solving, respect, camaraderie, all the while having fun enjoying a summer program. The sailing school has also been home to countless children who have become members of the provincial and national teams in sailing, ranking as one of the most successful sailing schools in Canada, helping to put Oakville on the map. No matter how far a child pursues the sport, the sailing school provides a vital role in our community by establishing or enabling access to sailing and provides meaningful life lessons to our youth. In short, the Yacht Squadron provides exceptional value to our community. The Oakville Yacht Squadron provides exceptional value to our community. With respect to options surrounding the lease renewal, I'm very happy to entertain the most feasible and safe way to drive traffic to the waterfront and help the town reach its initiatives of making the downtown and our waterfront more accessible and vibrant. At the end of the day, with the right cooperation, this should be a win-win situation for both parties, and I'm confident that a mutually beneficial agreement can be achieved. Again, a mutually beneficial agreement. In closing, as I watched the closing ceremonies of this year's Olympic Games and listened to the International Olympic Committee President Thomas Bach address the youth of the future, urging them to embark on paths towards the next Olympic Games, it is very discouraging to think, or disheartening to think that OAS and the town of Oakville may not be contributing to the future of sailing in Canada. Speaking for Lee Parkhill, Oakville Olympian. I'd now like to address the concept of what's wrong with the motion that was put up, the amended motion from last Tuesday. So the uncertainty, that it's really a definition of certainty, and the uncertainty that has been created over the last 3 years has not allowed OAS to reinvest in their facilities and equipment. Planned boat and equipment purchases for this coming summer were put on hold after last week's Administrative Services Committee. We're not going to throw good money into the river when we can't guarantee to our membership that they will receive long-term value for that investment. OAS needs certainty going forward before we can reinvest in our sailing operation and our sailing school, and before we can consider offering other services to the general public. We think that the way forward is clear, and you, Mr. Mayor and Town Council, can be part of that solution. We would like you to vote to accept the Memorandum of Understanding that has been negotiated between OAS and the town of Oakville, and that will allow town staff to formalize a license agreement for council's review and approval. Again, it's not a binding agreement. It's not a done deal until the license. We recognize it's not a done deal until a license agreement is in front of you. A supplemental agreement to that Memorandum of Understanding should be pursued by the parties to cooperate in the creation and operation of waterside destination and/or additional services to the public. We need one member of council to propose a resolution in parallel to the resolution that was circulated this afternoon. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Frankie, for your information. Are there questions for the gentleman? Councillor
Rilgar.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming and presenting. Bill, okay, so what you want memorandum of understanding, you go forward with that, but then you said a supplemental.
Well, we recognize that the town is thrown in additional terms at last minute. We're trying to react to that. We're saying we've negotiated a memorandum of understanding, and the intention was to move forward into a license agreement.
Okay.
Fair enough. But we also realize that, so what we want to do is have a long-term commitment to move forward.
That's from what the MOU
Based
says.
on the MOU. I mean, that was a
Okay.
negotiated agreement between both parties. In order to accommodate the issue that was brought forward last week, we're suggesting that there should be a supplemental agreement to that MOU that allows both parties to negotiate and find a way to deliver whatever waterside destinations. Could still be Ferris wheels and water slides, not sure, but we don't think so. But we don't know what it means. So, we're in an open position where we're not sure what is intended. We're not even sure what we can commit to. Because as was mentioned before, we don't have a restaurant. We don't have a catering operation. When we have events, we bring people in, we bring services in for the meals. So it's, you know, we don't have a regular restaurant operation. So it would be a major shift in our operation to offer what is perhaps being suggested. So it's going to involve a lot of discussion. It's going to involve a lot of understanding what the intention is. It's going to involve a lot of, investigating what's feasible, what we can do. So we're suggesting that we need to move ahead with a long-term commitment, and but in parallel to that, we move ahead with a supplemental agreement that requires both parties to get together and find a solution.
So what kind of a timeline would you put on that portion of the supplemental?
You've suggested the June. I'm not sure if our folks can do that.
I think I heard that was way too fast.
Probably. I mean, the desire would be to have it this summer. I'm sure. I'm not sure we can do that. We could probably have some trials if you want. Again, whatever we end up with has to be viable. We can't put the Oakville Yacht Squadron Sailing Club in a position where we're investing in restaurant facilities and then go broke because of it. So, it's unknown. I would suggest October 31st is a reasonable time frame for us to explore this, and probably, during those discussions we can do some trials and see what happens.
Okay. I thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you.
Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks for coming, Bill, and speaking to this. Has your organization, either through the Yacht Club or through the Association of Harbour Stakeholders, are you aware of the Harbour's master plan that's going on?
There's a process going through.
And have you guys had initial conversations and taking part in that process?
Yes, we are. Yes. As individuals, I'm not sure that as an organization we've submitted to that, but I know that as individuals we participated in those public sessions.
And I'll have questions for staff regarding this a little later. But what do you think? And I'm having troubles doing this because everybody's up here representing the Oakville Yacht Squadron, and I still don't know who I'm talking to, who's representing the Oakville Yacht Squadron. So I appreciate that. But would you feel comfortable if we were to fold that secondary waterfront activity, destination, et cetera, and we were to have some sort of a clause in the supplemental MOU that you mentioned to work and facilitate that process through the Harbour's master plan? Would that be amenable to the club?
I don't see why not at this point. I guess the word I'm hearing is perhaps. But if you put it through the Harbour's master plan, with all due respect, I'm sure the time frame will be 5 years, not 3 months. So,
it can seem like that, can't it? Yeah, I agree with you. I'm trying to find a middle ground here where we're not doing long-term policy on the fly, and this is what we want today because we've thought of it. We put plans and master plans in place because we want to think things out and think them through and think how and why and what we want to do with things. So I'm trying to find a middle ground where we might be able to have those two intersect. And it seems to me like the Oakville Yacht Squadron would like more time. It seems that they're content to work with the town to open a space up and have more of a destination. But I'm just curious as to what sort of a process that you guys are looking for here to have this conversation without having it be thrust upon you within about 5 or 6 days or a week. So I'm trying to find where the club's comfort level is in a process that's going to work for everyone. And you might not be able to answer that. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah, we're a community group, and quite frankly, as I said, this particular minute in time, I'm a general member of the club. I do not sit on the executive committee. The way we operate is our executive committee considers opportunities in front of it and then recommends, and then we have an annual general meeting where the membership evaluates whether that's where the club's going. So, your question, I think, is what process would we like to see in order to deliver waterside attractions or waterside destination? I think the problem with that is we're we're now entering into a commercial venture, which it isn't part of our mandate. It's not part of who we are. It would require a change in our bylaws, probably. We would have to go back to our membership to do that. So it's not that we're stonewalling. It's just this is a completely new exercise and a new destination for us.
And I appreciate that. I just have one follow-up question, and I think we do tend to put the cart before the horse here, and perhaps it's that you guys just get to rent space in there that's yours, or rent the whole thing, and the town operates something. I mean, you might not have to change anything. I mean, we're jumping to the end here. But am I correct in assuming though that it's very important that we decouple the lease extension and whatever the waterside attraction?
That would definitely be our preference.
Okay.
We want to be able to invest in our facility. We want to be able to invest in our sailing school, and we can't do that when there's just short-term focus on it.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Chisholm. All righty, Madam Clerk. Thank you, sir. Would you call the next? Sorry. Oh, Councillor Grant.
Thank you. And thank you for mentioning your name, Mr. Frank. I would have, over here.
There you go. Grant.
I would have tripped on the silent E. You've referenced the motion that's been bat back and forth like a ball of wool, but you did also refer to the email that you sent, I believe, at 4:55 this afternoon.
That's right.
All right. Now you've mentioned that you don't really have any standing on the committee, but you've made a proposed motion.
Well, I'm a member of our negotiating committee.
Okay.
Yes.
So basically, you have done that decoupling in a sense for us.
That's right.
Councillor Amir mentioned where you've got separated. First, we accept option one, the MOU that you've already signed.
Yes.
And then number two, supplemental agreement that the MOU be pursued by parties to cooperate in the creation of operation of waterside attractions or additional services to the public. Now, through this discussion, it seems that a deadline is needed. So you would accept that motion item with the addition of some kind of a deadline that would be useful? And I realize that we're dealing with a group of hobbyists, very skilled hobbyists, but a group of hobbyists who aren't quite used to the hard-knuckle negotiations to get things done quickly. But nevertheless, if we were to provide a deadline.
Excuse me, I participated in many labor negotiations. I understand the concept of back and forth. I understand the concept of knowing who you're dealing with.
Okay.
Those things have been absent in this process, but you ask us for a timeline. Again, when you don't know what you're looking at, when you don't know what the expectation is, it's very difficult to say we'll definitely have a solution by here. I think we definitely need to have discussions. I mean, how long is it going to take the legal department to write up a license? Is that a week? Is that a month? How long is that?
Well, apparently 3 months, but nevertheless, we'll see. Thank you very much.
So in those intervening 3 months, we can have a lot of progress, and that's the point in time where council will be reviewing the license for approval or not, and you can review progress against the supplemental at that point in time.
I would agree that something this important shouldn't be rushed. So,
yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your information, sir. Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation?
Next delegation is Ken Town.
Mr. Town, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Your Worship and the Council, I do have a PowerPoint presentation for some graphics to go along with my discussion. I was part of the lease negotiation committee, so I have been personally involved in these meetings, literally hundreds of hours of my personal time since 2015. And it'd be very safe to say that I'm frustrated with the lack of progress. And let me just get this up here before you start. And which one is yours, sir? Sure. So I do think that we can sit at the table and we can work out and finalize the lease in a very, without rushing it, a short order. So what I want to start with is a little bit about my background. This is my personal story. It turns out when I look back in terms of where I've lived in the world, I've ended up living in many different waterfront communities and really participated on the water. And many of these discussions that we've had with the town and with the councillors personally have to do with what does it mean to have access to the waterfront. So by living in different communities, enjoying that waterfront, using that as a method of, travel, those walkways along the waterfront. Lakeside Park has a personal story for me. I moved to Oakville right before my first daughter was born, nearly 21 years ago. And when I lived in North Oakville, there weren't any trees. So I bought a rake at the Canadian Tire, went down to Lakeside Park, raked a big pile of leaves so that my daughters could jump in it. So to me, that was part of waterfront access and accessing the waterfront and going down there and skipping stones and really enjoying the environment. I'd actually never been to the west side of the harbor until my daughters were enrolled in the OYS sailing school. I dropped them off at the first day of the OYS sailing school and I'm going, this looks like fun. The same, comment that Mr. Adams said is that you want to be down there participating. So I didn't want to be going to the office that day. I wanted to be enrolled in the sailing school myself. What that led to is me eventually taking the adult sailing program through OYS. And then at the end of that, being on the fence between joining the sailing program at OYS, where the club has boats that are open to the public to subscribe to that program and go sailing on a regular basis. I opted to buy my own boat and then went through a really steep learning curve. And then the OYS community is really what helped me do that. So instead of hiring contractors to do work, the OYS community educated me and allowed me to roll up my sleeves and learn how to do the work myself. And that's part of where that self-help concept comes from, is that the community is there to support people, get people into sailing, and enjoy the waterfront, not just going down and walking by the waterfront. When we get into thinking about what does access to the waterfront mean to me, so when I used to live in Seattle and when I used to visit, Vancouver and live in Vancouver, what I really enjoyed doing is going down to places like Granville Island. And if you've ever been there, you can go down there in the middle of the week in an off season and it's packed with people because it's part of their lifestyle that they go to the marketplace to buy the fresh produce, to buy the, the smoked salmon and have a sandwich in the market. And there's also, restaurants and activities for the children. And it's a working harbor. There's a chandlery, there's boats, there's everything you need to operate and sail from that location. The other thing that Vancouver also did really well is that in their zoning, they provided for that access to the public as well as the condominiums. And in most of those locations along False Creek, there's retail and restaurants at the ground level, there's light in commercial above that, and then there's condominiums for people to live above that. And it's a nice integration of people living together, working together, as well as the public using the same space. And when I think about access to the waterfront, I would like to know is where could we spend these big dollars and build something like Granville Island, build a public attraction, a tourist attraction, but also a place where the residents go on a daily basis. And I would love to be able to go down to someplace, hit up Florence Meats, Mermaid and Oyster, the farmhouse, the artisanal cheese shop, and the monastery bakery, all under one roof as a 4-season attraction. And I think of things like Coronation Park, where it's well utilized in the summertime, but the other 3 seasons, it sits pretty much empty. And there's other locations like the big building that we're, considering what to do in Bronte Harbor. It's a big empty building. It could be a market. We're going to talk about that cultural hub on the east side of the river. That's a big open space, and I hope we do a lot more than just provide a park. Like we want an attraction, something that you go down and do. And we've been talking earlier today about what is a destination. It's someplace where you go and meet with your family, meet with your friends. It's where something you want to go do. It's not something you pass through on your way to somewhere else. We talked a little bit about the 2008 master plan, and that, I apologize for the size of that, but that picture up in the top left-hand corner is some of the example graphics that were used in the master plan. Those pictures were, for whatever reason, taken in black and white after haul out, and it's when the community down at the waterfront is basically wound down for the season, and there's very few people that use the access or use that part of the harbor from October through to the spring until launch. and it doesn't represent the liveliness that takes place in the summertime. And those two pictures at the bottom, show some of that liveliness, and obviously the video did an even better job of presenting how that space is used throughout the summer. And to suggest that the OYS property is underutilized is a big misrepresentation. It's a live and active, vibrant community and offers that services to the public. And, if I put the OYS hat on, the public is open to come and join as members and then participate in that community. And they can crew on other people's boats, they can use the borrow boat program, or they can do the adult sailing program to get out and use the waterfront, not just walk past it. I want to bring this up is that, the OYS budget is a tiny, tiny fraction of what the town is spending on your master plan. If we had anywhere near those kinds of numbers, we could deliver on that Olympic commitment that we're talking about. And I'll leave that at that, and we'll come back and talk about master plans later on. And the last thing I want to finish with is, we have this other space on the other side of the river, and I hope that we can plan something that is an attraction that brings people down. It's a place for people to congregate, a place for people to use that space. So that's all my comments for now. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Town, for your information. Questions? Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
The next delegation is Leslie Frank.
Welcome, Ms. Frank. Council looks forward to your information.
Hello, Your Worship the Mayor, Town Council, and Town staff. I think I will probably shorten my presentation somewhat. I am very pleased to see that Town Council has at least verbally given us commitment back to the Oakville Yacht Squadron for what we represent. That is certainly something I think all of our members are pleased to hear, but we need to go a little bit further than that. I would like to address today to Town Council what the OYS community really is. It is not just a building and a collection of boats parked at the dock. That's what you get in a commercial marina. But rather, we're a community that gives life, passion, and character to the Oakville Harbor. I will quickly tell you what the Oakville Yacht Squadron has meant to our family. Now, I also want you to bear in mind when I tell you our story, that this story is repeated in many, many forms by many, many, many other people, Oakville families that have attended OYS in the past, in the present, and hopefully into the future. We moved to Oakville in part because of the OYS and what it offered. It's a not-for-profit, and that's important for you to recognize. It's a not-for-profit organization, a self-help club with a sailing school. This is not an elite club of wealthy yachtsmen, but rather a collection of sailors passionate about sailing and willing to share their knowledge with others. We found something far greater in this club than we ever imagined. Our family has been a member of this club for 28 years. Our 3 sons have literally grown up at the club in an active, healthy environment under the watchful eyes of many parents. My husband and I ran the sailing school for 6 years. We have both been on the executive for many, many years, and my husband served as Commodore. Our grandson will be attending the sailing school for the first time this year, as are our 2 nephews. And all of these children under the watchful eye of their great-grandfather, who still sails his boat out of the OYS. That is 4 generations. That's what I call a most livable Oakville. And that's why we're so deeply committed to this organization. Like many youth attending the OYS, our 3 sons have each taken lessons, taught sailing, and become the head instructor. For all participants, the sailing school offers opportunities for personal growth, life lessons, organization, teamwork, seamanship, commitment, and the joy of personal interactions. Can't get that from a cell phone or a store. Now, under the tutelage of our volunteer members, we welcome the Oakville the older youth to participate in our club racing programs as either crew or we train them as race officers. As volunteers, we have all coached and chaperoned the sailing school youth at regattas, helped them to learn the racing rules of sailing, represent themselves at protest committees, and we have taught them the essence of fair competition and acceptable behavior. For these experiences at OIS, I am truly grateful because they've helped us raise our 3 sons. And as the saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child. And again, a most livable Oakville. So this is part of the community that is the Oakville Yacht Squadron. Rightly so, we are very, very proud of our sailing school. Not only have families raised their children and grandchildren at OIS, but so too have many non-members. It's already been quoted tonight that 80% of our participants at the sailing school are from non-member families. Each year, we actually have about 250 students between youth and adult, the majority of those being youth, attending the school. So approximately over a 10-year period, that's probably 2,000 different youth. I consider that a fabulous contribution to the town of Oakville. But OIS is not just a sailing school. It's a community that extends far beyond. In recent years, we have held 3 Olympic fundraisers for 2 OIS members who have represented Canada at the Olympics, Oscar Johansson and Lee Parkhill. And let's not forget Don and Ted Haynes. They were OIS Olympians in 1972. These journeys always start at the grassroots with the supporting cast of hundreds of passionate sailors. We have also celebrated many weddings and grieved many memorial services for our lost friends. The OIS has held several regattas, bringing awareness to the town from outside participants. Some of these regattas include 2 Ontario High School Sailing Championships, several J27 Canadian and North American Championships, the Lake Ontario 300, which is a very prestigious regatta now on the lake, and Gyra. And let's not forget our annual Open Regatta. For many years, OIS has also co-hosted the Easter Seals Regatta with the Powerboat Club and Bronte Harbor Yacht Club. We raise funds for the Easter Seals, and actually, as important as that, we provide these disabled children and their families with a day out on the water. OIS has also developed a unique Borrow a Boat program. It is an access point at a very reasonable cost for individuals to try sailing without the associated capital expenditure. This program has been wildly successful beyond our belief. OIS purchases boats, and for a minimal charge, people join as members, and then they can join into this program. They have to learn how to maintain a boat, they have to prove that they're qualified to sail the boat, and boy, we have had tremendous response from people who would otherwise never have a chance to get into sailing. Now, the OIS has funded and built our clubhouse and the sailing school, and we are willing to reinvest in this much-needed new sailing school building. Also notably, as a point of history, OIS members rescued the original lighthouse from the West Pier in the days gone by, and they moved it to their current location. We were given the deed by the federal government and have lovingly restored and maintained at our own cost the lighthouse over all these years. And hasn't that turned out to be an Oakville icon? Check out the TripAdvisory page. You'll see it there, believe it or not. I call that a most livable Oakville, once more. Now, a yacht club is not about a small group of people enjoying the waterfront. It is our obligation and privilege to share our facilities and knowledge with those who desire to learn the sport of sailing. And all OIS members feel that we have done an admirable job at this and will continue to do so. A most livable Oakville. A most livable Oakville, that's a recurring theme here. Oakville's tagline. What does that mean? In part, it is a town that can offer a variety of activities to its residents, take advantage of its natural resources for recreation. We are fortunate to have 2 harbors in Oakville, and we could fill more harbors if we had them. But what keeps these harbors alive? It is the sailing communities that organize these water events, provide access to water activities at a reasonable cost. Without these communities, we would simply have boats parked at moorings looking pretty. What a lost opportunity. So where do we go from here? How can the town be constructive rather than destructive to accommodate both our needs? Essentially, we have the basis of an agreement in the Memorandum of Understanding. And yes, there may be times when the needs of OIS and the town are difficult to recognize. Yes, a sailing community does require certain facilities to operate. We are not a big footprint in that clubhouse for a sailing facility. But together, we can make this work. Building extraordinary facilities requires extraordinary efforts. I believe this is a worthwhile partnership. We have not hit a roadblock, but rather a bump in the road. I just looked at my time, sorry. Just 7 short days ago, a multi-year process was unexpectedly derailed by a previously undisclosed desire by the town for waterside attractions. What does this mean? It obviously, as we've discussed, needs further exploration, and I would suggest careful deliberation by all interested parties. This is not a time for impulsive decision-making. With mature thought, integrity, good faith, and visionary leadership, we can all make this work. This is the process I expect from our elected town council. I am asking town council to accept the staff recommendation to accept the Memorandum of Understanding and, if necessary, pursue a supplemental agreement. I believe we have a common goal. We just have to find a way to achieve it. We have an extraordinary facility in the waterfront, and I would love to see that contribute to our most livable Oakville.
Thank you, Ms. Franke,
Thank
for
you.
your information. Are there questions for the delegation? Thank you, ma'am. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Next delegation is Pierre Perronneau.
Welcome, Mr. Perronneau. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship, Mayor Burton, and members of Oakville Council. My name is Pierre Perronneau. I'm the past Commodore of OYS and a member of the OYS Negotiating Committee. In 62 years of living in Oakville, which I think is longer than some of you have been alive, I've been witness to a substantial change from a sleepy little town to a bustling metropolis. I've watched the harbor and the 16-mile creek, my old fishing hole, change from an industrial site on a garbage dump and swamp on the west bank to a vibrant, colorful, active river with pleasure craft of all sorts, canoes, kayaks, paddleboards, etc., sailboats, powerboats, the list goes on. Yes, change has been good, and properly directed will continue to be so. I'm proud to say that OYS, in no small measure, helped transform that landscape for the better. And on behalf of the OYS, I wish to say I agree with the mayor that negotiations have taken too long. It's been suggested that 8 years have passed since negotiations began. Well, the reality is that OYS was presented with the possibility of a new lease in 2010. And as prudent, volunteer fiscal managers of a not-for-profit organization, we could not conscionably agree to substantial financial increases in that lease, unaffordable to our rank and file, while there were still 5 years left on our old lease. So in May of 2013, we requested that town staff start the negotiating process to deal with the lease that would expire in July of 2015. Staff replied to us they needed to conclude negotiations with Bronte Harbor Yacht Club and the Oakville Powerboat Club before ever coming to the table with OYS. So we waited. After another request from OYS in July of 2014, a reply was received that negotiations with OYS would not occur until the second quarter of 2015 at the earliest. At that time, OYS was then invited by Commissioners Bell and Lalonde to the first meeting with town staff on December 10th, 2015, some 5 months after the expiration of our current lease. I'm afraid to say that meetings during 2016 were not very productive. OYS agreed early on in the discussions to accept greater public access to the waterfront. After all, the more people that come down, the more likely we are to get additional membership. At our last meeting of 2016, I believe it was November 11th, the town's landscape architect proposed to us that we should pave over the entire front lawn to create space for boat masts. Well, that doesn't seem livable or very green. At that point, OYS requested that senior town commissioners get involved in the negotiation. Well, mid-February of last year, a handshake deal was concluded at Town Hall with Mayor Burton present and senior town staff. My conviction that that final, mutually satisfactory agreement had been reached was such that I sent an email to our membership and copied Mayor Burton that praised Mayor Burton for personally intervening and getting both sides back to the table and finalizing a very workable arrangement. Unfortunately, when the written version came back to us, it did not resemble the handshake agreement, which had been based on a written proposal from OYS as requested by Mayor Burton. The ensuing time since has been spent getting both parties back to that agreement, with some months off to deal with the record level of flooding. And I'd like to commend the town staff for a fantastic job in dealing with the town flooding. Thank you. Last October, staff came back to us with a very well-defined site plan proposal that was similar to the handshake agreement, and over the last 4 months, we've worked out the financial and operational details to get to that MOU. On December the 11th, staff presented OYS with a new change to the MOU, something that hadn't been discussed in the 2 years previous. It was a request to suddenly purchase the docks that OYS owns. OYS had spent $115,000 on those docks since 2014. Staff offered us $50,000 and made a note telling us, well, we know that new docks would cost the town $130,000. Pretty good deal. A subsequent staff offer was received for $65,000. And at the last meeting, Tuesday last week, the ASC meeting, we countered with $81,455, which we thought was far more reasonable. Now, in a phone call on February the 8th with Gord Lalonde, we discussed this. Gord stated he felt our number was reasonable, but that we should take it to committee and it would likely be approved. At last Tuesday's Admin Services Committee, the recommended staff position, something your staff has worked on for 2 years and our side for 2 years, was suddenly thrown out, all that work. Option 1, which was the recommended staff position, so much work involved, was suddenly not approved. And a third option, terminate the OYS lease, was passed. And so here we are today. 26 and a half months after our first meeting in December, OYS signed the MOU, accepting all terms, including the $65,000. Well, this time frame is approximately the same time as it took to negotiate the Bronte Harbor Yacht Club lease or the Oakville Powerboat Club lease. The final MOU that we have signed strikes a great balance between town objectives of public access and increased harbor revenues, OYS objectives of community program continuance, fiscal viability, and heritage preservation. Thank you, staff, for that MOU. It is a good one. The process has taken time, as anything worthwhile does, but not because OYS was dragging its feet. Town priorities and changes, and the OYS insistence on remaining a viable, community-oriented, affordable club have all played a part in this negotiating process. An issue was raised at last Tuesday's committee meeting that OYS had locked the gate at the north end of the boardwalk. Well, that gate was open all spring and summer during the sailing season to enable our sailing school children easy access to the boat ramps. And this was against the advice of our insurance broker, and once all boats were out of the water, in the interest of public safety and our liability, yes, we did lock that gate. As the tenant leaseholder of the boardwalk, it was our understanding from our insurance people that OYS was responsible for any liability issues arising from accidents on or from falling off the boardwalk. Walking along docks in winter is especially hazardous, potentially fatal. Unfortunately, our presenter that evening was not informed of the prudent locking of the gate, remembering only that it had been open all summer. Well, as per the motion passed by committee last Tuesday, we have removed that gate. Not only opened it, we've removed it and two others. We expect that the town now acknowledges that liability. Regardless, anyone could have circumvented the gate by walking around it from the town's finger dock, or simply walking through the 10-foot opening in the main gate that has never been closed in at least the 15 years I've been a member. I've never seen that door closed. Many have commented over the years that OYS is surrounded by high fences. The reality is the town erected and owns 3/4 of the high fencing surrounding the club. Presumably, this fencing could have been removed by the town at any time. Hundreds of hours have been invested in this process by both parties. There is fatigue on both sides. We've signed the MOU, removed the gates, and are concerned about the investment in the facilities which we have had to curtail due to this new uncertain future. Running a facility such as OYS takes a staggering amount of volunteer work and dedication, as well as annual capital and operational investment, with very little, if any, financial return. We're a not-for-profit. We're not looking to make money there. It's a work of dedication and love for an organization, for children, and our sport. And we're eager to discover how the town and OYS can bring greater use of the waterfront to the public through cooperative, viable activities. And to achieve that goal, which we've all worked very hard towards, we ask Council to reconsider the motion brought before the Admin Services Committee February 20th and offer up a new motion, please, that Council accepts the recommended option 1 of the report from Staff Legal Department and to proceed with the staff recommended form of the MOU. These people have worked hard to put that MOU together. It's a good one. That supplemental agreement to the MOU, a supplemental agreement to an MOU be pursued by both parties to cooperate in the creation and operation of these waterside attractions that no one seems to be able to define, and or additional services of benefit to the public. Thank you for your support.
Thank you for the information. Are there questions for the delegation? Councillor Elgar.
Can I get a copy of your presentation, the very last part, the supplemental part, if you don't mind?
Yes.
If they can just give it to the clerk.
I'm sorry.
Well, it's obvious we're not going to finish this evening with the number of people, and I just want to get into more wording and with the supplemental portion you're talking specifically. That's all, so that we can work together going forward.
Very simply, we have a great MOU. Staff and ourselves have taken hundreds of hours to put that together.
Yep.
We're proposing that you propose a motion to accept that MOU, and yes, let's add a supplemental requirement, an addendum to the MOU, that both parties work towards finding out what it is, number one, what it is you mean by this waterside attraction, and how can we achieve that? Because we don't know what it is. You haven't defined it.
We'll get you there. I think every member councillor wants to get to that point so that everybody knows when they walk out of here, whatever night that might be, where they're going. So thank you. Thanks very much.
Councillor Adams.
Can I ask you what your comment would have been on the original recommendation from the Admin Service Committee agenda from last week? Because in that, it's a 6-point item.
6-point item.
And it includes, so first of all, receive the report. Second, to authorize that the CAO and town clerk be authorized to execute the MOU with the OIS for the use of the lands at 97 Forsyth Street in the form attached as Appendix A. That the town solicitor be authorized to make minor modifications to the MOU that does not affect the substance of the document. For that the CAO and town clerk be authorized to execute a license agreement that incorporates the terms of the MOU with the remaining terms to be negotiated to the satisfaction of the solicitor. That there's number 5 is dealing with the docks and the price tag of $65,000. And the last one is that should OIS refuse to sign the MOU prior to May 31st, 2018, the town solicitor to be authorized to send a notice of termination in respect of the current OIS lease to be effective at the end of the 2018 boating season. So at the time, were you satisfied with that recommendation or not?
We were satisfied with everything, and we had been advised that the $65,000 could be $81,455 if we came to committee and made a presentation. Other than that, yes, we were satisfied with all those points.
Okay, and so the final piece there around signing the MOU, which you now have, if there's an element in there that says if you don't sign, there's notice of termination, and that was sort of a let's get on with it element, I think.
Yes, and we did sign, so we more than met that deadline.
Yeah, so that piece is kind of no longer relevant.
Right.
But there's still a issue of, okay, there's an MOU that's in play, but now we have to get on with the signing of the lease. If there was a similar piece to that talked about we got to get a lease in place by a certain date, would you be comfortable with that?
I think we would. We're looking for certainty.
Okay.
We can't operate, we can't invest in the place unless we know what we're dealing with. We need the lease.
And if we took the elements of that original recommendation, I'm just looking for a way of working
The MOU, are you talking about the MOU, the original?
I'm talking about the original recommendations from the committee. So we've got these different frameworks that we're working with.
Yes.
And the original framework was replaced by the 4-point recommendation from the committee. And so since then, we've now had around this table and with some members of the public who have delegated to us discussion about changing or modifying the recommendations from the committee, and I'm trying to figure out whether we ought not to go back to the original recommendation set and use that as the starting point for how to proceed. That's what I'm trying to get to. So the one piece.
So my answer to that would be yes.
Okay. So great. So, however, that being said, there's been discussion around the council table here about the need or desire for some terminology around additional public amenity space. Now, I'm using that term loosely here.
Yes, because it's very undefined.
But if we took one of the elements of that and added terminology, would you be comfortable with that?
Very likely. I
Okay.
would have to see it, but
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think it's time to call the next delegation. Madam Clerk.
thank you.
Next delegation is Andrew Cull.
Mr. Cull, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, councilors, my name is Andrew Cull. I have lived in Oakville for 22 years, and my family and I have taken advantage of the many programs offered within this community and enjoyed many miles of trails and parksides. I joined OIS as a Borough Boat member 2 years ago and became the program's director 6 months later. The Borough Boat program was initiated by the membership to make the sailing experience available to all residents at a fraction of the cost of owning a boat. An adult sailing program followed close at hand to give those members the tools they needed to safely manage a sailboat and crew, and continues to evolve to meet current regulations. The Borough Boat program has made safe sailing and the waterfront available to hundreds of residents over the years. Our membership and executive have always been committed to welcoming the public. All our members started out as members of the public. With over 70 years of operating a sailing club and sailing school, we have the expertise necessary to grow with Oakville for another 70 years. I ask Council to reconsider its decision to terminate the lease and find a resolution that secures a future for OYS and develops a waterfront attraction for all of Oakville to enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your information. Are there questions for the delegation? Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Next delegation is James Perrineau.
Mr. Perrineau, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Yeah, I'm okay. Hello, Mr. Burton and council members. My name is Jamie Perrineau, and I'm the Commodore's son. I grew up in Oakville on the lake, and it was hard for me as a person to get accepted and to be an equal anywhere. I was bullied and pushed around and didn't have any friends. Then my parents joined OIS when I was still young. And first time I was treated with kindness and respect. And with a snap of a finger, I don't have any fear of making friends or going out into the public and starting a conversation. I'm fortunate to be a member. I love being there and enjoying the Friday night dinners, the regattas, the sail past, the weddings, and because I get to dance with all the ladies. And this club is respecting each other, believing in one another. And it even has a Get Out on the Water program that we accept the public for who we are. And I am amazed at their club how it accepts if they don't have a boat, we have boats they can borrow if they want to sail. We have a Get Out on the Water day when we take people from the public out on and sail while getting to know them. My parents take part in this Get Out on the Water program, and they volunteer many hours hours and hard work at the club. Since I have a disability, it takes me twice as long to do stuff you guys do. They help, the people at OAS helped me when I needed help when I was younger, but now since I'm older, they push me and for me to ask for to wait. Yeah, they want to push me to do it myself. For that, I am grateful, and that's why this club is so important to me. This club and people in it stand for respect, acceptance, heart, fun, and equality. I love cruising with my parents and on the lake to other clubs. I like that OIS holds an Easter Seals Regatta every year because I used to get support from the Easter Seals when I was a child. I'm proud to be a member of this club. I'm proud to be a member of this club as a Canadian because I truly got to meet a real Olympian. His name is Lee Parkhill. I would never be able, no matter how hard I tried like him, to do it myself. This club was founded in 1946 with a couple of World War II veterans who claimed the land from a garbage dump and made it nice. And if you take this club away, then all these people who have worked so hard and enjoy sailing will lose out and wipe out all the history and hard work, because heart and soul isn't easy to find. And these people work at this club every day. And thank you for hearing me out. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. You've been the best spokesman for the club yet. Councillor Duddick.
Thank you. Just to add on the mayor's comments, thank you very much, Jamie, for your delegation. You do personify the heart and soul. Thank you very much.
Jamie, I think you might want to change your speech a little bit. You mentioned that it takes you twice as long to do things. Have you looked at how long it's taken us, council, to make a decision here tonight?
We have time for 2 or 3 more before the meeting time expires. Council, I'm expecting to resume the meeting tomorrow night here, and so you're on notice. Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation?
The next delegation is Cynthia Robbins.
Welcome, Ms. Robbins. Council is looking forward to your information.
Your Worship and Councillors, my name is Cynthia Robbins. I've been a resident of Oakville for 37 years. I've been sailing with the Oakville Yacht Squadron for all the time I've lived here. After my husband died almost 5 years ago, I kept the sailboat. I can now sail it single-handed, thanks to all the help and support of this community of my sailor friends. I have a speech, but really I'd like to speak to some of the events that have transpired this evening, if you don't mind. One of them is the comment by Councillor Dudek, who mentioned an amendment to the MOU to include proposals related to a waterfront destination. I'm on the executive. I'm pretty sure OYS would sign the amendment if Council wants to authorize option 2 with that amendment. Thank you, Councillor. The other one is Councillor O'Mara, who mentioned incorporating the waterfront destination in the Harbour's Master Plan. Councillor, that's a very responsible suggestion because it would examine all potential options and select the one that's best for the town. Again, I'm sure OYS would be pleased to work within that framework. It makes so much sense. So thank you for that suggestion, Councillor. I wanted to mention that 2 other clubs, Bronte Harbour Yacht Club and the Oakville Powerboat Club, also occupy properties on the Oakville waterfront, and they've recently negotiated agreements with the town that allow them to continue to operate as boating clubs in much the way they have always done. We're not party to those negotiations, but I presume that the establishment of a waterfront destination was also included in those agreements. OYS was told we'd receive the same deal as the other clubs, so that presumption. The third comment was the slides that accompanied the singing of O Canada. And if you didn't notice, or maybe you did notice, the last slide was the Oakville Yacht Squadron. The town of Oakville thinks OYS is a waterfront attraction in itself. So I urge Council to consider the Memorandum of Understanding. Option 2 is certainly workable. The Harbour's Master Plan is certainly workable. We want to live here, work here, play here, and sail here. We want to be part of the town of Oakville. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robbins. Madam Clerk, are there questions for the delegation? Thank you, ma'am. I think we'll call the next delegation.
The next delegation is Michael Judd.
Mr. Judd, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Yes, hello. If I may, if it pleases the council, I would like to switch out my position as we have some members from Sail Canada here, and being that this is going to be held over to other days, if they could maybe speak ahead of me, if that meets your approval. It does? If maybe, excuse me?
That's fine. The next
fine?
delegation is Glenn Lethbridge, the Executive Director of Ontario Sailing. Is that who you had in mind?
Yeah, yes, if we could just go through those, that would be nice. If we have time to go through, Sail Canada is the furthest distance from us, I believe, Todd Irving.
All right, well then why don't we go to Todd Irving, President of Sail Canada, and then we'll go to Ontario. Ontario has...
me putting you to sleep, right?
As far as I can tell, Ontario Sailing seems to have 2 delegations here. So, Mr. Irving, some kind of national precedence gets you ahead of them.
Well, that'll cost me a little later. I will be showing a couple of pictures here. If we could get ready for that, that would be
Well,
great.
we can get you some technical assistance.
That would be terrific.
I can see Chris on his way.
Just a couple of pictures, low tech. Good evening, Your Worship and members of council, staff, and Oakville Yacht Squadron supporters. My name is Todd Irving. I am the president of Sail Canada, the national governing body for sailing in Canada. I chair the board, and I have been a board member and part of Sail Canada for 15 years. I am asking you today to consider allowing the Oakville Yacht Squadron to continue operating its club, sailing school, and all development programs that it delivers, as it has done in such an excellent fashion over its history. Since its founding, OYS has been a cornerstone of the Canadian sailing landscape. As one of the 371 member clubs and 173 sailing schools across the country, OYS is certainly one of the most active and prolific. Thousands of sailors have been produced.
Sorry, sir.
Yeah.
And are these the photos you want to show here?
Sure.
Okay.
They're right here, these 3.
All right, so they're just going to go here, then you can just switch when
Excellent,
you want.
thank you. Thousands of sailors. We've heard about national team members, Pan Am champions, Olympians, world champions, Canada's Cup winners, supporters of the America's Cup, Rolex Sailors of the Year in Canada, names like Lee Parkhill, Oscar Johansson, Don and Ted Haynes, Dirk Newellman, who is a business owner in Oakville for Ontario Yachts, is a world champion unto himself. They may not be household names like Larry Kane or Adam Van Couverden, but in the sailing community, they are known. And OIS is the home of those names. Sail Canada represents hundreds of thousands of sailors across the country. We are tens of thousands of active members. We are 1,500 plus instructors across the country. We are 900 plus race officials and dozens of national team members. OIS is one of the hearts of Sail Canada and of sailing in Canada. That is the national perspective. My personal perspective is I am one of those people that the Franks talked about. My parents don't sail. I began sailing at OIS. I took all my lessons here. I became an instructor here. I became a trainer of instructors here. I took that, and together with some of the people in this picture, all of whom are still in contact and friends, and taught sailing in Trinidad, in Bermuda, teaching their instructors, taking sailing across the globe. I became the president of Ontario Sailing, the president of the J24 Class Association, and now the president of Sail Canada. Sailing is my passion, and OIS is the reason for that passion. I was adopted by a sailing family named the Fialas the day I arrived. He was my instructor. I joined his family sailing on their boat 34 years ago. And I have not stopped. It is everything that I am. It is how I define myself. And I owe that to OIS. Oh wait, I gotta get this in just a second. This is the famous Oakville beaver. And all of these are my best friends. This picture was taken in 1985. I can confidently say these two would not be sailors if it weren't for the OIS. The town of Oakville states in its vision to be the most livable town in Canada. It is because of OIS, as a teenager, for the 18 years I lived as a resident in Ward 4, it is because of OIS that Oakville was livable for me and for my friends. Please allow OIS to continue. It is the fabric of our community. It is one of the best examples of what sailing clubs should be in Canada. It sounds like you're close. It sounds like you have some common ground to work from. I think the writing is on the wall. Avancez. Go forward. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your information, sir. Speaking of Ontario sailing, we have Glenn Lethbridge and Peter Bradley. Did you guys arm wrestle or flip a coin?
I'll be really quick, and then we'll let Peter take over.
Mr. Lethbridge, we look forward to your information.
Yeah. Mr. Worship, councillors, members of Oakville Yacht Squadron, and members of the town of Oakville. My name's Glenn Lethbridge. I'm the Executive Director of Ontario Sailing. We're the governing body for sailing in the province of Ontario. As the provincial sport body, we have 220 member clubs, schools, and camps around the province. We report to the Ministry of Tourism, Culture, and Sport for your information on that. Of 55 funded sports in the province, sailing is the 4th ranked, which is the highest we've ever been, which we're really, really proud of. Cutting really short into the chase, I want to give you a little bit of fabric of what's happening in the province with some other towns, just to put it in context for your information. As I travel through this great province, I meet with many townships, many mayors, many organizations. Just a few that I'm going to highlight. In Thornbury on Georgian Bay, the town gives the property for their sailing program to operate at no cost. And it sounds like in your agreement, you're allowing for some of that with the sailing school, which is a very positive move. Sail Perry Sound is supported by the town of Perry Sound to prosper. In fact, they've worked with the province and the federal government to make sure that there's sailing and a sailing program in Perry Sound. I visited this summer in Cedar Island Yacht Club, which is in Kingsville. If anybody knows the province, it's just near, it's on Lake Erie, just near Windsor. I met with the mayor, who actually not only is the mayor during the day, he's also runs the local newspaper. We were meeting there because they're starting their own sailing program in conjunction with Ontario Sailing. The mayor actually came down, took time not only to take pictures for his newspaper, but to also give his support to make sure that there's youth coming to the program, funded actually by the township. And I also met with the police agencies who are funding youth to come, so they know the importance of that. Waterfront development is important to all communities. Access to the waterfront and water is part of the heritage of Ontario. Everyone wants to come to the water, either to sit, take a break on life, or get out in the water. It's one of our mottos, and I'm really appreciative of one of the speakers talking about the Get Out in the Water program. We did have one of the ministers, I think he's left by now, from the province. Our Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport produced a document, and I can leave this for you to look at. It's called Game On. And Game On was a legacy from the Pan Am Games. You've heard of our wonderful Lee Parkhill, who was a medalist at the Pan Am Games in addition to Olympian. Sailing is a sport and a recreation activity that 6-year-olds to 96-year-olds can participate, able-bodied and disabled. We actually have boats that disabled and able-bodied sailors can sail together with each other, which is one of the few sports and one of the reasons why in the Canada Summer Games we're one of only 3 sports that are in that organization. OYS has embraced the true spirit of fair play, good sportsmanship, and investing in the youth of today. What is remarkable is it's been done totally by volunteers. No paid staff other than the sailing staff in the summer. I want to offer Ontario Sailing support to the town, to OYS, if we can help in any way to make sure that this partnership of town and OYS continues. It's part of your fabric, and it needs to continue. And I'd like to introduce Peter Bradley, who's our president and has come down from Ottawa to speak. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Lethbridge. Mr. Bradley, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, members of Council. You have a difficult task here. I recognize that. I'm here really to share 3 things with you and perhaps offer a couple of suggestions. The 3 things I'm going to offer you is that Ontario Sailing is here in support of OYS. We cancelled our board meeting tonight. We have 4 members of our board and 4 members of our staff here tonight to lend that support. The second message is the support of the long history of sailing in OYS, which you've heard quite a few times already, so I won't go into that. And the third thing is to offer some thoughts if you're unable to come to an agreement. So Ontario Sailing supports OYS. All of our clubs face some challenges and ongoing challenges as sailing clubs. We're trying to deal with market value rents with all of the municipalities that we're facing. The MPAC is a challenge for us, and we're trying to balance those with trying to keep sailing affordable for our members. Unfortunately, we have this legacy of yachting, which is not at all what sailing is about for the vast majority of our members. So trying to balance those things, and our clubs all provide a critical role in providing access to the water and getting members of the public to the water. In terms of the long history of sailing, you've heard that already. Last thing I'd like to leave you with is another hat that I've worn in the past was I was the Commodore for Nepean Sailing Club in Ottawa, one of our larger clubs. And we had a lengthy negotiation with the City of Ottawa. It took us 5 years, so we're slower perhaps than some of you. We went from negotiation to litigation to mediation to agreement. And quite frankly, for us, I think the most valuable part of that was the mediation, because it allowed us to get to an agreement, and it allowed us to strengthen the partnership between the club and the city, such that it's a much stronger relationship now than it was then. We were part of the support of the Canada Games bid of the City of Ottawa last year. So a couple of thoughts to leave you with. One is, if you're not able to come to agreement, I'd suggest something you might consider is a mediation process rather than a termination process. And the reason I suggest that is, you've heard it a few times tonight, but volunteerism is what makes these clubs successful. They're able to do a lot of things without spending a lot of money. And when cities or municipalities try and do the same thing, they're usually trying to do it with staff that are paid. So I'll leave you with that thought. The second thing I'd like to leave you with is that for the I've lost it, of course. The challenge of staff and mediation were the two thoughts that I wanted to leave you with. So, Ontario Sailing is here in support. We support you, we support the club, and we hope that you're able to come to a successful outcome.
Mr. Bradley, thank you for your information.
Yep.
Councillor Knoll has a question for you, apparently.
Apparently. Thank you, Your Worship. I have a question with respect to the conversation we've been having about this concept of some sort of waterfront amenity that the town has some desire to have on that property, in potentially in partnership with OIS. Are you familiar with other yacht clubs that have that kind of arrangement elsewhere in the province of Ontario, and can you speak to that at all in terms of what that might look like?
Well, I can share with you my experience with my own home club, Nepean Sailing Club. We operate a restaurant on our property, and to be honest, that was probably the most challenging thing we've ever done as a club. Sailors are good at running sailing clubs. They're not very good at running commercial kitchens and restaurants. And it's a big drain on a club, on the volunteers of the club, and it's asking them to move outside of what they normally do. So, it really depends on what it is that you're trying to arrange here, but you might be more successful at having somebody independently run that type of facility rather than trying to offload that onto a club.
And that leads to the next question. Are you familiar with a situation where that has happened, where there's been a third party involved that's actually operated a food or some sort of concession within the club?
Well, again, I can refer back to my own history with our club. As we were starting running a commercial kitchen operation, that was the way we started that. We contracted out the kitchen operations to an independent third party. They ran the kitchen, they made a certain profit, and they paid a small license fee for the facility back to the club. And that worked very successfully for a number of years.
Thank you, Your Worship. That was great.
Councillor Adams.
I'm an old Nepean boy, and my parents actually had a boat at the Nepean Sailing Club for a while.
Fantastic.
But I did my training at Britannia.
Ooh.
And I know, I was on the Blackjack. But to my knowledge, Britannia it was closed, like it was gated off, really. And most clubs I've seen are fairly gated off. How many have you seen that are open? And to my knowledge, I don't think Nepean is open fully, is it?
Nepean is not fully open, and nor is Britannia. The challenge for both of those facilities is trying to balance public access, which can happen to a vast majority of the facilities during the daytime and during the times when public are trying to access it. But you're balancing that with trying to protect the assets of the club and the members of the club and the boats and the motors and all of those assets. And so the challenge is finding a workable balance for the two.
Would I be correct in thinking that across the GTA there's a greater desire to have open access than in some of the smaller communities?
I couldn't state categorically one way or the other.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, sir, for your time and your travel.
Thank you very much.
We have Mr. Judd, we only have 5 minutes left. Would you like to use it or come back?
I'm going to be past that a little bit, so I have to come back.
Well then, ladies and gentlemen, I think we could consider that we've reached the end of the allotment for this meeting, and we'll recess this meeting until tomorrow at 7 o'clock here, same time, same place. Thank you very much for your attention.